Chapter 935. Nie Tian's face darkened when he sensed the pressure coming from the void. He felt as if a huge boulder was pressing down on his chest, making it hard for him to breathe. Yu Rushuang was very strong. Not only was her cultivation far higher than his, but the bloodline power of the Blood Jade Lotus was even more terrifying. Just this kind of pressure was enough to make Nie Tian feel strained. Nie Tian, this woman's bloodline power is very strong. She seems to have fused with the power of the Blood Demon clan. Be careful, the Sword Elder warned Nie Tian. All right. Nie Tian nodded. He didn't know how Yu Rushuang could be related to an ancient beast, but what she had done was enough for her to die 1,000 times over. Boom. Nie Tian's Chi Sword. He activated the Sword of the Divine Wheel and fused it with the power of the Celestial Field, breaking through the frozen space in front of him. His complexion also improved a little. "I'll help you," shouted Lin Feng. A terrifying sword intent surged in the air. The Dragon Chant sword swept past, tearing apart the frozen space. Humph! Almost at the same time, Lin Feng appeared. He looked at Lin Feng and said coldly, "Your opponent is me." "You?" Lin Feng's eyes narrowed. Lin Feng gave him a very strange feeling, as if the two of them had known each other for a long time. Looking at the two of them, Nie Tian also felt a trace of a similar aura from them. Adding on the fact that the two of them had similar names, he faintly felt that the relationship between the two of them was not ordinary. Lin Feng and Lin Feng were both in the 5th tier of the celestial human realm. Lin Feng was a swordsman at the Sword Soul realm. He was definitely at the peak of swordsmanship in the Shumi world. He could kill an ordinary warrior in the 5th tier of the celestial human realm with a single sword strike. However, Lin Feng's strength was also very strange. After being nourished by the Qilint's precious blood, his cultivation had also reached the 5th tier of the celestial human realm. Moreover, Nie Tian knew that he had been hiding his strength. His real battle strength was still unknown. It was hard to say who would win in a battle between Lin Feng and Lin Feng. Two figures soared into the sky. Without saying a word, they began to fight. Lin Feng was the first to attack. His first attack was the piercing sun's rainbow. His silhouette was extremely fast and his sword energy was extremely pure. It was enough to make any sword cultivator shiver in fear. Swoosh! Whoosh! In the void, 2 crimson sword lights were like 2 meteors. They were extremely fast, leaving behind 2 glaring marks as they attacked Lin Feng. Facing this powerful sword, a pair of black wings appeared on Lin Feng's back, instantly condensing into a black longsword. It was the longsword that Nie Tian had seen before. Boom! A ray of black light whizzed through the air like a huge black snake, causing the void to tremble. Boom! The first move collided, and a terrifying power bloomed in the space. Endless black and red light wreaked havoc, and the 2 figures retreated. The 2 of them were equally matched in strength, and it would be difficult to determine the victor in a short period of time. Nie Tian withdrew his gaze and locked onto Yu Rushuang. She was his most terrifying opponent. "You're courting death." Yu Rushuang could sense Nie Tian's intense battle intent. She smiled coldly and mockingly said, "A little loach wants to fight a dragon? You're overestimating yourself." In Yu Rushuang's eyes, Sky Sword Pavilion's greatest support was Ancestor Sky Sword. He was also someone she had always feared. As long as he died, the others would be nothing. As for Nie Tian, he was just a loach that had appeared out of nowhere. She didn't care about him at all. If Nie Tian hadn't come out of the forbidden land of wind and cloud alive, Yu Rushuang wouldn't have even heard of his name. "Yu Rushuang, you're overconfident." Nie Tianling smiled calmly. His eyes were frighteningly calm. Immediately after, he moved. The heavenly slash of the sword emitted an intense sword cry that resounded through the sky, causing the frozen space to tremble. Suddenly, endless thunder force surged out. The violet-gold thunder force condensed into 9 purple thunderbolts that surged toward Yu Rushuang. Nie Tian had not only used Thunder Force in this move, but he had also combined the power of the War God Art's 9 heavenly strikes. He had a feeling that the War God Art could bring out the full potential of Thunder Force. Oh! Yu Rushuang's eyes narrowed as she looked at the 9 thunderbolts. Nie Tian's strength had slightly exceeded her expectations. Demonic Lotus devours the world. The next moment, her eyes regained their calm. The corner of her mouth twitched as a demonic lotus petal flew out from behind her. It instantly grew to thousands of meters tall, like a curtain that blotted out the sky as it came crashing down. The 9 thunderbolts bombarded the demonic lotus petal, and a strange scene ensued. The demonic lotus petal wasn't damaged in the slightest. It directly devoured the thunder force. What? Nie Tian hadn't expected Yu Rushuang's blood jade demonic lotus to be so powerful that it could directly devour the thunder force. Bang! The next moment, a powerful aura pressed down on him. With a muffled sound, Nie Tian's body trembled as he was sent flying. Nie Tian steadied himself and spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was filled with shock. Yu Rushuang's power had far exceeded Nie Tian's expectations. Just one move was enough to make him cough up blood. Even stranger was the fact that the bloodline power of her blood jade demonic lotus was extremely terrifying. It seemed to possess a powerful devouring attribute that could devour all kinds of power. Nie Tian's thunder force also possessed a devouring attribute, but it wasn't strong enough. It was much weaker than the blood jade demonic lotus. Oh! Yu Rushuang's attack had injured Nie Tian, but her eyes were not filled with joy, but shock. Although the move just now was not her full strength, it was enough to kill a martial artist in the 6th level of the Heaven-Human realm. Nie Tian was only in the 4th level of the Heaven-Human realm, but he was able to take this attack head-on. Nie Tian, your strength has astonished me. Yu Rushuang's eyes trembled, but then she smiled cold. But that's all. Nie Tian's strength had exceeded her expectations, but it was far from enough to make her feel apprehensive. Is that so? Nie Tianling sneered and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. His eyes were filled with determination. That move just now was just a test. The real battle was about to begin. Nie Tian's body shook as he shot into the sky. The air trembled and the frozen space exploded. What a powerful aura! Yu Rushuang's eyes darkened. It seemed that she had still underestimated Nie Tian's strength. Feeling Nie Tian's powerful aura, Yu Rushuang's eyes became a bit solemn. Only now did she realize that Nie Tian wasn't some small fry she could kill at will. Demonic Lotus Night Kill. Yu Rushuang growled, not wanting to waste any more time. The blood jade demonic lotus behind her suddenly shot out a beam of black light. A black trajectory appeared in the sky. It was incomparably evil as it rolled toward Nie Tian. Chapter 936. Nie Tian stood in the air like a sword. Suddenly, he felt a vast force pressing down on him, causing his eyes to widen involuntarily. The power of the blood demon. Nie Tian's heart trembled slightly. He could vaguely see the power of black magical symbols surging within the black light, which were exactly the same as the magical symbols he had seen in the devilish ghost face. What a terrifying power! Nie Tian's eyes narrowed. Only now did he realize just how terrifying the power of the Blood Demon clan was. It was easy to understand. Since the Blood Demon clan was one of the 12 ancient demon clans, it was only natural that their power was terrifying. Nie Tian could sense that the power of the Blood Demon clan was far more than that. It was just that Yu Rushuang's Blood Jade Demonic Lotus had not completely merged with the Blood Demon clan's power, so she was unable to bring out the true power of the Blood Demon clan. Even so, Yu Rushuang's Blood Demon clan's power was enough to make Nie Tian feel a terrible threat. God-chilling sword. Nie Tian roared and slashed out with his sword. At the same time, he retreated to avoid the Blood Jade Demonic Lotus's attack. Boom! The sky shook violently. The 1,000-meter sword shadow was unable to withstand the Blood Jade Demonic Lotus, and was directly destroyed. A terrible aura of death descended upon Nie Tian. Ah! The sudden pressure caused Nie Tian to cry out involuntarily. In the next instant, a terrifying force directly seeped into his body, bombarding his limbs and meridians. Roar! The 9 dragon veins were attacked. A terrible thunder power was stimulated. A dragon's roar rang out inside his body, causing him to tremble violently. The blood demon Qi and the thunder power clashed in Nie Tian's body. A terrible pain surged through him. The heart-wrenching pain caused Nie Tian's face to contort. The power in his body was about to tear him apart. Huh! Yu Rushuang, who was watching from the side, let out a sound of surprise. Nie Tian should have been instantly devoured by the blood demon clan's power. How could he still have the power to resist? Yu Rushuang, don't underestimate this silver-haired brat. He has a powerful energy within him that even I fear. Don't hesitate. Just kill him. At this moment, the voice of the blood slaughter spirit echoed from the blood demon altar. All right. Yu Rushuang also felt that something was wrong. Nie Tian had amazed her time and time again, so it was best to get rid of him as soon as possible. Demonic Lotus Hand. Yu Rushuang didn't hesitate. The blood jade lotus behind her suddenly went berserk. A scarlet power spread out, and a blood-red hand appeared in the sky, grabbing at Nie Tian. Nie Tian. Lin Feng was on the other side, and when he saw that Nie Tian was in danger, he couldn't help but shout in fear. Unfortunately, he was fighting with Lin Feng and couldn't help Nie Tian. Nie Tian, your lightning power is stronger than the blood demon Qi. Defeat it quickly. The Sword Saint's nervous voice rang out in his mind. He had waited hundreds of thousands of years for a suitable candidate like Nie Tian. He didn't want to see him die. If Nie Tian died, the Sword Saint's remnant soul would lose its host and would dissipate. Boom! At this moment, the demonic lotus hand had already arrived. If it caught Nie Tian, he would certainly be crushed to a pulp. Nie Tian was currently struggling fiercely. He was drenched in sweat and had no strength to fight back. Xian Xiao! Shouted Nie Tian suddenly. The hellfire crucible appeared behind him, and a figure jumped out. It was Xian Xiao. Roar! Xian Xiao appeared and roared. Blood jade mystical sand surged out of his body and condensed into a giant blood-red hand in the air. Boom! The 2 blood-red palm prints collided in the air, causing the void space to tremble violently. A terrifying blood-red wave of air, visible to the naked eye, appeared in the sky. Ah! Xian Zhao's body swayed and he screamed. Like a kite with its string cut, he flew back and smashed into the ground, stirring up a wave of dirt. Damn it! Yu Rushuang's killing move had been destroyed by Xian Xiao. She couldn't help being furious and slammed her palm into the ground. Boom! A huge crater appeared in the ground. Xian Zhao's body was smashed into the crater and disappeared. Ah! At almost the same time, an angry roar rang out. Nie Tian's body shook and he spat out a mouthful of blood-red qi. He had forced out the blood demon qi in his body. Xian Xiao. Nie Tian stabilized his body and sent out his divine scent. He couldn't sense Xian Zhao's aura. His eyes were bloodshot and filled with killing intent. Genius of the Xian family, dog shit. Yu Rushuang shouted coldly. The black robe on her head was suddenly lifted, revealing an extremely demonic face. It was an extremely terrifying face. Flesh and blood were rotting, and one could even see the eerie white bones. Oh! Nie Tian's expression darkened when he saw Yu Rushuang's face. Nie Tian, this is the result of her forcibly fusing with the power of the blood demon. Not only her face, I think even her body is equally terrifying. The Sword Elder reminded Nie Tian and said in a deep voice. Nie Tian looked at Yu Rushuang's face and thought of her body. Goosebumps rose all over his body. Yu Rushuang's heart was simply unimaginable. She was vicious not only to others but also to herself. In order to increase her strength, she had forcibly merged with the blood demon Qi. That was insane. The power of the ancient demon race was not so easy to obtain. Nye Tian, it seems that Mo Biming has already died at your hands. Yu Rushuang looked coldly at Nye Tian and smiled coldly. Xian Shao had originally been in Mo Biming's hands, but now he was with Nye Tian. This could only mean that Mo Biming was dead. But she was wrong. Mo Biming was not dead. He had only escaped. Not only will he die at my hands, but you will also die at my hands. Nye Tianling smiled coldly. You! Yu Rushuang's tone was extremely disdainful. She did not care about Nye Tian at all. If Xian Shao had not appeared just now, Nye Tian would already be a corpse. Me! Nye Tianling replied coldly. His aura surged and a violent sword intent was released. A powerful sword aura bloomed in the air, causing the void to tremble violently. Humph! Yu Rushuang could sense that Nye Tian's aura had grown stronger, but her eyes were filled with disdain. She was confident that she could take Nye Tian's life with her next move. She did not want to waste any more time with Nye Tian because there was a fierce battle going on in Sky Sword Pavilion. Only Yu Rushuang and a few others remained in the palace. The others had already charged into the Sky Sword Pavilion. As long as Yu Rushuang and Lin Feng could finish off Nye Tian and Lin Feng, Sky Sword Pavilion would be completely destroyed. Yu Rushuang's eyes became even more ferocious. Boundless killing intent condensed into a solid form and surged towards Nye Tian. Sword Heart Ending Moon. Nye Tian stood tall in the sky, sword intent surging around him. His sword aura condensed to the extreme as he slashed out with the sword Absolute Cleave. The sword radiance shot tens of thousands of meters into the sky, its soaring sword intent threatening to tear the world apart. Chapter 937. Nye Tian's figure whizzed forward like a bolt of lightning. In the void, a majestic sword shadow appeared, with a mighty momentum, rolling over. Dark clouds churned and the sky changed color. It was as if the only thing that existed in the world was sword intent. What a powerful sword intent! Yu Rushuang's eyes narrowed when she saw Nye Tian's aura. The blood jade lotus behind her blossomed, fusing with the power of the blood demon. When it fully bloomed, it filled the space within 10,000 meters. Yu Rushuang's bloodline power was already stronger than Yu Jin's. Now that she had fused with the power of the blood demon, its power was unimaginable. Up in the sky, the lotus bloomed and the aura of death filled the air. What a powerful blood demon power! Nye Tian couldn't help but furrow his brows as he sensed the smell of blood assaulting his nostrils. However, he sped up and dashed straight towards the source of the smell. Yu Rushuang, I didn't expect that the bit of blood demon power I gave you would be able to unleash such power. You've amazed me. The voice of the blood-slaughtered spirit rang out once more. At the same time, the blood demon altar shot out a black mist that melted directly into the blooming lotus. Instantly, the blood jade demonic lotus became even more violent. Black tentacles grew out of its body, as if thousands of snakes were dancing. Die! Yu Rushuang shouted. The enormous power of the blood jade lotus surged out and pressed down on Nye Tian. Rumble! The sky shook as the fiercest collision erupted with the most terrifying power. Space suddenly froze. The next moment, the soaring sword light was swallowed by the blood jade lotus. Nye Tian's figure was also swallowed by it. Not good! Surrounded by the power of the blood jade lotus, Nye Tian sensed that something was wrong. A strange power crazily surged into his body. Break! Throwing caution to the wind, Nye Tian activated the sky shrouding totem. Starlight flashed and the power of the stars forced open a space. Battle God Heavenly Slash! After taking a deep breath, Nye Tian's entire body surged with the power of thunder. He slashed out with his sword, and a huge sword image appeared. The totem that covered the sky wrapped around the sword image. From afar, the huge sword image looked like it was condensed from starlight. Bang! With a muffled sound, the sword shadow rushed out of the thousands of demonic lotuses, creating a path. Nie Tian's figure flashed and rushed out. Not dead. Yu Rushuang was flabbergasted to see Nie Tian reappear. She hadn't expected that Nie Tian would be able to escape from the blood jade demonic lotus. Nie Tian stood in the air, his entire body dripping with blood. The blood jade demonic lotus that had fused with the power of the blood demon was too terrifying. Just the terrifying aura alone was enough to tear his skin apart. What a terrifying power! Within Nie Tian's sea of consciousness, Sword Elder could not help but exclaim. This was the first time he had seen Nie Tian use the power of the stars. That kind of majestic power was too terrifying, and even he felt a deep sense of dread. Sword Elder even felt that if Nie Tian could completely control this power, it would definitely be even more terrifying than the power of the Inkjade Dragon Sword itself. Nie Tian, it seems that it wasn't your luck that I chose you, Sword Elder couldn't help but say to himself. Of course, Nie Tian had no idea what the Sword Elder was thinking. His gaze was fixed on Yu Rushuang. She was one of the strongest enemies he had ever encountered. I have to get close to her. That's the only way absolute tremor can be used to its greatest effect. Nie Tian's gaze was resolute as he murmured to himself. The reason he hadn't used absolute tremor was because he hadn't found the right opportunity. It was his greatest trump card, and he needed to be certain he could kill her in one blow. Yu Rushuang, this kid can use mental attack. Be careful. Spirit Bloodbath's voice rang out, warning Yu Rushuang to be careful. Spirit Bloodbath also realized that Nie Tian's battle prowess was far more terrifying than it seemed on the surface. It wouldn't be easy for Yu Rushuang to kill him. Nie Tian, I don't care what kind of power you have hidden in your body. You must die today. Yu Rushuang's gaze darkened, and her killing intent intensified. She had a feeling that if she couldn't kill Nie Tian today, she wouldn't have another chance in the future. Nie Tian was too terrifying. He was only at the 4th layer of the sky human realm, but he was already able to fight her head-on. Once he grew stronger, it would be unimaginable. You talk too much. Nie Tianling sneered. His body shook and the blood on his body disappeared. His aura became even sharper. Spirit Bloodbath had already warned Yu Rushuang, so she would definitely be very careful. If Nie Tian wanted to use absolute tremor again, his chances of success would be even slimmer. Demonic Lotus Weep. Yu Rushuang was furious. The blood jade demonic lotus bloomed even more wantonly, and the aura of death in the air thickened. The blood jade demonic lotus released a blood-colored light that pounced at Nie Tian. Barrier. Nie Tian's expression turned grim when he sensed that the powerful ward was trying to seal his vital meridians. He immediately formed hand seals, and a streak of golden light descended from the sky. It was none other than the soul-severing heavenly seal, the most powerful of the 3 seals of the god of battle. Bang! The soul-severing seal collided with the demonic lotus weep barrier. With a muffled sound, the 2 forces were annihilated. Nie Tian and Yu Rushuang retreated a few hundred meters at the same time, but their expressions were completely different. Yu Rushuang was furious. This was the first time Nie Tian had forced her back. It seemed that he was getting stronger. Nie Tian's expression was calm, without the slightest ripple. The more calm he was, the angrier Yu Rushuang became. Nie Tian, I didn't want to use this move, but you've forced my hand. Yu Rushuang's body trembled slightly. A layer of black mist suddenly surged from her body, causing the aura of death in the air to grow even thicker. Oh! Nie Tian's eyes narrowed when he sensed the disturbance in the air. He knew that Yu Rushuang was about to use her strongest move. Nie Tian, I didn't expect you to be so strong. No wonder you were able to leave the forbidden land of wind and cloud alive. It seems that I've underestimated you. Yu Rushuang's figure slowly rose, and the black mist around her became thicker and thicker until it completely enveloped the blood jade demonic lotus. The crimson lotus had turned an eerie black, and it was filled with a demonic aura. Nie Tian, be careful. She's using the power of the blood demon to its fullest. The Sword Elder cried out, his voice trembling. Yu Shuang was not actually very strong. In the eyes of the Sword Elder, she was so weak that he couldn't even look at her. But to the current Nie Tian, she was strong enough to threaten Nie Tian's life. Nie Tian nodded grimly. He released all of his blood qi, and his sword intent surged. At this moment, he could only face it head-on. His sword intent wreaked havoc in the air. Amidst the blood qi, formation runes appeared and circulated around Nie Tian. Nie Tian was prepared to receive Yu Shuang's strongest move with the sword sealing restriction formation. Chapter 938. Up in the sky, the black lotus bloomed and the entire sky darkened. Only the sword aura around Nie Tian shone brightly, making him look like a small boat in a raging sea. Die! Yu Shuang shouted viciously. The black lotus was like a mountain, but it moved with incredible speed toward Nie Tian. Nie Tian's face turned red and his breathing became ragged. His entire body was drenched in cold sweat, but the determination in his eyes never wavered. Blood qi surged and sword intent surged. The sword sealing restriction formation was activated. Nie Tian carefully sensed every strand of power within the sword intent. At the same time, he poured all of his astral energy into the sword intent. In this moment of life and death, he suddenly closed his eyes and his divine sense entered a mysterious state. Within the sword sealing restriction formation, the sword intent surged with the power of the sword runes. As the astral energy poured in, the runes seemed to be stimulated and slowly became berserk. Nie Tian sensed the change in the runes and poured even more astral energy into them. The runes seemed to be boiling as they crazily attacked the sword sealing restriction formation. With the support of the sword runes, the power of the runes multiplied. The vast power of the formation seemed to be able to pierce through the darkness. Boom! However, at that very moment the black lotus came crashing down from the sky. A terrifying pressure rolled out, almost suffocating Nie Tian. This kind of power was too terrifying. There was no way to defend against it. He could only endure it. Sword Dragon devours the world. Just as the black lotus pressed down, Nie Tian let out a furious roar. The power of the sword sealing restrictive formation instantly erupted, and a huge sword dragon appeared in the void. A boundless dragon aura spread out, and it resisted the power of the black lotus. Rumble! Terrifying sounds rang out in the sky. The two powers were too strong. They fought and devoured each other, unable to completely overwhelm each other. Yu Shuang was stunned to see that the black lotus had failed to kill Nie Tian. Instead, it had fallen into a stalemate. Her scarred face trembled and became even more ferocious. The 9 dragon veins in Nie Tian's body revolved crazily, and the realm origin formation rumbled incessantly. At the same time, blood qi constantly surged out of his body. This was a battle of life and death. He had to give it his all. At this time, if he relaxed even a little bit, he would definitely die. Boom! The two powerful forces collided with each other, and the space couldn't bear it. The space let out a groaning sound, and faintly, one could see space cracks appearing and disappearing. Nie Tian, it's impossible for you to be a match for my sect. Die. Yu Shuang seemed to have gone mad. The black mist around her rose once more, and the aura of the black lotus suddenly surged. Roar dash! The sword dragon suffered a huge blow and immediately let out a mournful wail. At this time, Nie Tian felt that the sword dragon's aura was becoming weaker and weaker. The huge black lotus was devouring the sword dragon's power. Oh no! Nie Tian's eyes trembled violently as a bad premonition arose in his heart. His sword sealing restriction formation had been able to resist the black lotus because the power of the stars had stimulated the power of the sword runes. That was why he could face Yu Shuang head-on. But if the sword dragon was devoured by the black lotus, his power would also be greatly reduced. At that time, he would be in danger. I'll go all out. In this moment of life and death, Nye Tian was extremely calm. He made up his mind and charged toward the Black Lotus. At this time, if the sword dragon couldn't resist the Black Lotus, Nye Tian would be directly devoured by it. Not even his corpse would be left behind. Nye Tian had no better choice. He could only fight with his life on the line. Yu Rushuang saw Nye Tian suddenly rush over. Cold, she spat out 2 words, "You're courting death." If Nye Tian had chosen to run now, he might have had a chance to survive. Who would have thought that he would run over to die? Nye Tian, what are you doing? Within his sea of consciousness, the sword elder panicked. He couldn't understand what Nye Tian was doing. Trust me. Nye Tian didn't explain too much, and only uttered 3 words in a deep voice. Then, his speed increased. The proud sword heaven wings appeared on his back, and he dashed forward like a shooting star. In midair, Nye Tian's body suddenly flashed with a layer of red light. Scarlet flames ignited around him as he activated the ultimate fire scarlet heaven armor. Bypassing the center of the Black Lotus, Nye Tian passed through the strange Black Lotus. In the blink of an eye, he was only a few hundred meters away from Yu Rushuang. Suddenly, Yu Rushuang seemed to think of something and her face tensed. But it was too late. Nye Tian's eyes flashed and a terrifying spiritual deterrent rolled out. Invisible spiritual waves flashed through the void. Ah! Yu Rushuang screamed. She immediately fell into a daze, her mind under Nye Tian's control. She had always been on guard against Nye Tian's spiritual attacks, but she hadn't expected them to be so terrifying. Within a few hundred meters, she couldn't resist them at all. Starry Sky Eye was the second awakening of the galaxy. Now that the power of 100 billion stars in the second galaxy had been fully awakened, the power of the Starry Sky Eye was beginning to take shape. Nye Tian had bet everything on this attack, so even if Yu Rushuang was prepared, she would still be shocked by the absolute tremor. Hellfire Crucible. Seeing Yu Rushuang's stunned expression, Nye Tian didn't hesitate. He knew that given her strength, the absolute tremor would only last for a moment. But as soon as his voice faded, he realized that the Hellfire Crucible hadn't appeared. Oh no! I don't have enough star power! Nye Tian exclaimed as his expression flickered. He had used a large amount of star power to activate the sword runes and had just opened Starry Sky Eye. Now that he wanted to use the Hellfire Crucible, he had used up all his star power. At that moment, Nye Tian's eyes widened. He knew that if he didn't kill Yu Rushuang now, once she woke up, it would be his doomsday. The situation was critical. Nye Tian's brain was working furiously. But at that moment, something strange happened. Black Feather Demon Flame. A crazy roar rang out in the sky. Then, a black sword light whistled through the air, carrying with it a power that could tear everything apart. Lin Feng. Nye Tian raised his head and looked at the figure that had suddenly appeared. His whole body shook. At the most critical moment, Lin Feng had actually made a move. Nye Tian. A panicked voice rang out behind Lin Feng. It was Lin Feng. Lin Feng didn't know why either. He was in the middle of a bitter battle with Lin Feng, but Lin Feng had suddenly given up on him to attack the other side. Oh no! Nye Tian's pupils constricted, but he still didn't give up. A long sword appeared in his hand, but it stopped in midair. He suddenly realized that Lin Feng's target wasn't him, but Yu Rushuang. Lin Feng's deadly attack wasn't aimed at Nye Tian, but at Yu Rushuang. Nye Tian's eyes widened. He also didn't know why Lin Feng would change sides at the most critical moment. Chapter 939. Lin Feng's sword slashed down from the sky. His eyes filled with the most resolute killing intent. The black sword aura swept past Yu Rushuang. She regained her senses in an instant, but the black sword aura was already in front of her. Huh! Yu Rushuang's pupils constricted, revealing great fear. She wanted to resist, but it was too late. Bang! With a muffled sound, the black sword aura pierced through Yu Rushuang's body, spraying blood into the sky. The gigantic demonic lotus in the sky abruptly trembled, and the gigantic black petals actually shattered into pieces. Lin Feng seemed to have been waiting for the best opportunity to kill in one blow. Nie Tian stood in the sky, looking at Lin Feng with a puzzled expression. He hadn't expected the latter to attack Yu Rushuang at the most critical moment. Lin Feng had just shouted the name of Mingjian Villa, which seemed to have something to do with the Sky Demon cult. Yu Rushuang's body trembled. The sudden sword attack had seriously injured her, and her life was in danger. Her body could no longer bear the blood demon energy inside her, and it was slowly being devoured. Why? Yu Rushuang looked at Lin Feng in astonishment. 16 years ago, Mingjian Villa lost 683 lives. This is why. Lin Feng held the dragon-roar black-feathered sword in his hand, looking like a demon god as he stood in the sky. Mingjian Villa. Yu Rushuang mustered all the strength in her body to say the name, her voice trembling. Then, with a burst of energy that she didn't know she had, she roared, "Back when we destroyed the Mingjian Villa, the Villa Master, Lin Lang, escaped with 2 children. You were one of them, weren't you?" Mingjian Villa had once been a first-rate faction comparable to Sky Sword Pavilion, but it had been destroyed a dozen years ago. So it was the Sky Demon cult's doing. Yes. Lin Feng nodded solemnly, his expression indifferent. So that's how it is. Yu Rushuang's body trembled and she coughed up a mouthful of blood, but she actually laughed. It seems that you joined the Sky Demon cult to wait for this moment for revenge. Who would have thought that I would die because of a moment of carelessness? Yu Rushuang didn't trust anyone easily, but she trusted Lin Feng. And it was this careless trust that had cost her her life. Nie Tian shook his head slightly as he listened from the side. Yu Rushuang's death at Lin Feng's hands seemed accidental, but it was inevitable. Yu Rushuang was too vicious and merciless. She had killed too many people and made too many enemies. Even if there was no Lin Feng today, there would definitely be Zhang Feng or Wang Feng in the future. In a way, Yu Rushuang had died because of her ruthlessness. Just like the Black Moon Empire, there was absolutely no need for her to massacre the Alchemist Guild and the Blacksmith Guild, but she still did it. These 2 guilds were not to be trifled with. Even if she did not take revenge now, she would definitely not let it go in the future. Lin Feng, Lin Feng, you really didn't let me down. There was no sorrow in Yu Rushuang's eyes. Instead, she smiled strangely. Bang! With that, Yu Rushuang's body could no longer bear the power of the blood demon. Her body was torn apart and turned into a bloody light. Lin Feng stared at the bloody light without any expression on his face. You! At that moment, Lin Feng landed on the ground. He wanted to say something, but he swallowed his words. You are the other one of the 2 children that the leader of the Mingjian mountain village, Lin Lang, saved. Lin Feng looked at Lin Feng coldly and said emotionlessly. After that, his silhouette flickered and he left. That's... Lin Feng looked at the silhouette of the man and was surprised. Nie Tian was stupefied. So Lin Feng and Lin Feng were both from the Mingjian mountain village. But he didn't know if they were related by blood. Nie Tian had a feeling that the 2 of them were brothers. At that moment, Nie Tian didn't have time to think too much. He immediately looked at the blood demon altar. Huh! He checked with his godly awareness and was surprised. The blood demon's chi had disappeared. It seemed like it had escaped. The blood demon has already left, said Mr. Jian in Lin Feng's mind. All right. Nie Tian nodded and said to Lin Feng, Lin Feng, take Jian Chen and leave. I need to find someone. Ever since Nie Tian and the others had entered Devamara Palace, they hadn't seen anyone from Devamara Palace. Nie Tian was a bit worried, but he had to find Rui Qinyu first, then he could leave Devamara Palace. Lin Feng nodded. Immediately after, he took Jian Chen with him. Nie Tian immediately destroyed the blood demon altar and went to the main hall of Devamara Palace. Rui Qinyu was trapped in the ice and snow stone. Lin Feng couldn't sense her. Nie Tian opened his starry sky eyes, which allowed him to see everything within 100 meters. Very quickly, he arrived at a hidden room. He opened the door and saw a beautiful silhouette lying on a crystal stone. It was Rui Qianyu. Nie Tian arrived next to Rui Qianyu. He was so close to her that he could sense her qi. After dealing with Devamara Palace, I have to go to Domain Ice as soon as possible, whispered Nie Tian while looking at Rui Qianyu. The ice and snow stone was produced in Domain Ice. Maybe he could find a way to break it there. Huh? At that moment Mr. Jian was surprised. Mr. Jian. Nie Tian suddenly thought of something. He looked happy and asked, "Do you know how to break the ice and snow stone?" "I don't know," said Mr. Jian while shaking his head. "This little girl has the legendary 9-colored pupils." Nie Tian slightly shook his head. So Mr. Jian knew that Rui Qianyu had the 9-colored pupils, that's why he was surprised. "Nie Tian, is this little girl your wife?" The sword elder seemed to have sensed something and suddenly asked. "She's not. I already have a fiancé." Nie Tian's face turned slightly red as he hurriedly explained. Mr. Jian laughed and didn't say anything else. Nie Tian took Rui Qianyu and left immediately. He was worried that the people of Sky Sword Pavilion had already started fighting with the people of Sky Demon Cult. Nie Tian left the sword catacomb. The scene outside made him frown. There were countless corpses on the ground. "Oh no!" cried Nie Tian. It seemed that Yu Rushuang had planned everything. She had lured Nie Tian and the others into Sky Demon Palace, and then sent others to destroy Sky Sword Pavilion. However, she didn't expect that she would die at Lin Feng's hands. When Nie Tian arrived at Sky Sword Pavilion, the battle had reached its climax. Countless followers of Sky Demon Cult were rushing toward Sky Sword Hall while Lu Lingyun and the others were defending. "Humph!" Nie Tianling sneered. His eyes were full of killing intent. He turned into a ray of light and rushed over. The sword intent around him was wild. Everywhere he passed, there were wails of ghosts and howls of wolves. With Nie Tian's current strength, these people of Sky Demon Cult were no match for him. Like a tiger in a flock of sheep, Nie Tian directly broke through the attacks of the people of Sky Demon Cult. Chapter 940. In the Celestial Sword Palace, Lu Lingyun was seriously injured. Wang Yiping's sword had pierced through his chest. "Lu Lingyun, your position as Heaven Sword Pavilion Master should have been replaced a long time ago," Wang Yiping roared arrogantly. She wanted to finish Lu Lingyun off with another strike. Lu Lingyun looked glum. He hadn't thought that Wang Yiping would be so strong. She was even stronger than him. Lu Lingyun wasn't afraid of this brother who had gone through life and death with him. He only felt pain. "Die!" Just at this moment, a cold voice rang out. Shortly after, a vast and mighty sword aura blossomed in the sky. A gigantic sword shadow whistled over, as majestic as a mountain. Wang Yiping sensed the terrifying killing intent. He turned around and saw Nie Tian's face. His eyes were filled with terror. In his opinion, Nie Tian should have died in Celestial Demon Palace. How could he appear here? Nie Tian had come out of Celestial Demon Palace, which meant that Yu Rushuang had failed. Boom! However, Nie Tian didn't give Wang Yiping any time to think. His terrifying sword slashed through the air, and Wang Yiping died on the spot. Ah! On the other side, a horrible shriek spread in the air. An old man in gray clothes had been pierced through by Lin Feng's sword. That old man was another vice-head of the Celestial Demon Cult. In the blink of an eye, 2 vice-heads had died. The army of the Celestial Demon Cult was defeated and started fleeing in all directions. The sword cultivators of Celestial Sword Pavilion had their morale boosted. They chased after them like crazy, and the scene turned into a bloody massacre. That was the terrifying thing about strong cultivators. They could change the entire situation in the blink of an eye. Nie Tian didn't care too much about it. He just coldly looked at everything in front of him. Winner takes all. This was how cruel the world was. If he and Lin Feng hadn't appeared, the people who would have been killed would have been the people of Celestial Sword Pavilion. In a flash, most of the people of the Celestial Demon cult were killed. Only a few managed to escape. Nie Tian and the others arrived at the Heavenly Sword Hall. Jian Chen had already woken up, but his body was still very weak. It seemed that he would need a long period of seclusion to fully recover. "Brat, you are already a few thousand years old monster. Can't you be a bit more steady in the future?" The Sword Elder scolded him in a bad mood, but his words were filled with concern. In the next few days, Lu Lingyun sent people into the demonic palace to destroy it and find many good things. Xian Qiu rescued Xian Tianluo from the Heavenly Devil Palace, but the latter's Yuan Meridian and Yuan Spirit had already been destroyed, so he could only be an ordinary person in the future. Xian Zhao's death made Nie Tian feel a little ashamed. However, Xian Tianluo and Xian Qiu did not say anything. Xian Qiu had seen with his own eyes what Xian Xiao had become. That state was worse than death. Perhaps death was a form of release for Xian Xiao. Xian Qiu, Yu Jiao, and the others left the Heavenly Sword Pavilion. Nie Tian asked Han Tian to return with Yu Jiao. The Black Moon Empire was very unstable, and it could no longer be ruled by the Xian family. In the following period of time, Nie Tian cultivated in seclusion in the Heavenly Sword Pavilion. He had to wait for Mo Rushi and the others to come, and he urgently needed to comprehend the power of the sword pattern. The power of the sword pattern is indeed terrifying. In the room, Nie Tian stood up with a look of joy on his face. He had already begun to gradually master the power of the sword pattern, and he found that the power of the sword pattern not only improved his strength, but also the speed of his cultivation was very fast. In just over half a month, Nie Tian's strength had risen from the 4th tier of the Heaven Realm to the 5th tier of the Heaven Realm. With the strength of the 5th tier of the Heaven Realm and the newly comprehended power of the sword pattern, Nie Tian was now confident that he could fight experts like Yu Rushuang and Jian Chen head-on. At this time, the Corpse Demon King had also successfully refined the Soul Slave. "This is the Soul Slave you refined?" Nie Tian looked at the fireman in the furnace of hell, and could not help but frown. The Corpse Demon King chuckled and said, "Master, this guy's soul power is too strong. I have no choice but to temporarily use the Starry Sky's sacred flame to suppress his soul power. Right now, he is like a newborn baby and does not know anything." Nie Tian's face darkened. Although the soul slave refined from the soul clone of the 9th tier Heaven Emperor expert, Zhu Qianqiu, still looked like Zhu Qianqiu, his eyes were extremely clear, without any impurities. But this was also good. Nie Tian could teach him everything again. After thinking for a while, Nie Tian decided to change the name of the soul slave from Zhu Qianqiu to Nie Qiu. If Zhu Qianqiu, an elder of the Zhuiying God Palace, knew that Nie Tian had refined his soul clone into a soul slave and changed its name, who knew what expression he would have? It would definitely be ugly. Corpse Demon King, how's Nie Qiu's strength? Nie Tian was most concerned about the soul slave's strength right now. He remembered that when Nie Qiu descended back then, his strength was 9th tier Heaven Emperor on the surface, but his true combat power was only around 2nd tier Heaven Emperor. Hence, that was why he was defeated by Nie Tian, who consumed the Qilance tier. Should have 1st tier Heaven Emperor's strength, the Corpse Demon King said with a chuckle. 1st tier Heaven Emperor? Nie Tian was stunned and could not help swallowing his saliva. 1st tier Heaven Emperor's strength. This was not very terrifying strength. But in the Sumer world, this was absolutely the peak of the peak. One had to know that the strength of the Sumer 4th peak was merely 9th tier Heaven being. Nie Qiu's strength was actually 1st tier Heaven Emperor. This also meant that Nie Tian could roam the entire Sumer world unhindered just by relying on the strength of this soul slave. Master, there's something I have to remind you. At this time, the Corpse Demon King was rather worried and said, "This soul slave's soul strength itself is too strong. Furthermore, it's very berserk. So it can't be used casually. If it agitates the berserk murderous nature within his soul, it's very easy to lose control. This. Nye Tian was taken aback once more. The corpse demon king's words directly splashed cold water on him. With Nye Chio's strength, if he lost control, it would simply be a catastrophe for the Sumeru world. Suddenly, Elder Sword's voice also sounded out and said, "This soul slave isn't perfect. It's mainly because the main body's soul strength is too strong and can't be completely erased. Once he loses control, he'll become a murderous demon. In this Sumer world, no one can control him." Yes. The corpse demon king knew Elder Sword's identity and behaved very respectfully. "Elder Sword, do you have a way to thoroughly erase his original soul strength?" Nye Tian saw Elder Sword speak, his gaze flickered, and he asked. "Yes." The Sword Elder nodded with a smile. He gave a positive answer and said, "I can use the power of the sword runes in your body to slowly erase his original soul force. However, this will take a few months or even longer. Moreover, it may affect your cultivation speed. Are you willing?" Nye Tian's gaze turned intent. Thinking for a bit, he did not hesitate much and said, "No problem." Even though it expended some sword mark power and his cultivation speed decreased a little, Nye Tian did not care about these. To be able to obtain a first-level Heavenly Emperor soul slave was very worth it. Nye Tian. Right at this time, a voice sounded out outside the room. Chapter 941. During this time, Nye Tian had been busy cultivating and didn't pay attention to the siblings. After all, the two of them had come out of the wind and cloud forbidden land because of him. Nye Tian felt that it was necessary to keep an eye on them. Lady Zichen. Nye Tian walked out of the room and saw Ni Zichen and Ni jamming. "Nye Tian, we're leaving." Ni Zichen didn't beat around the bush. "Leave?" Nye Tian was taken aback. Then, he asked, "Where are you going?" Ni Zichen and Ni jamming weren't strong and they didn't have much experience. If they left just like that, he wouldn't be at ease. 10,000 Demon Dragon Abyss, Ni Zichen said coldly. "Demon Abyss?" Nye Tian was astonished and almost screamed. It would be better if the Ni siblings went to other places, but it was too dangerous for them to go to the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss. "Sister, do we have to go to Demon Abyss?" Ni jamming couldn't help but ask. He didn't want to leave. "Yes." Ni Zichen nodded. Her eyes were determined. She had obviously made up her mind. This time, she was only here to greet Nye Tian. Nye Tian's eyes flickered. He had told Ni Zichen about Demon Abyss last time and remembered that Ni Zichen's expression was unnatural. Did Ni Zichen discover something and wanted to go to Demon Abyss to confirm it? "When do you plan to leave?" Nye Tian asked. He knew that he couldn't persuade Ni Zichen anymore. "Now," Ni Zichen replied. Actually, she had already made up her mind. She just didn't say it. She had indeed discovered a big secret from the dragon ring Nye Tian had given her. This secret was too big. She had to go to Demon Abyss. Now, Nye Tian didn't expect Ni Zichen to leave in such a hurry. Originally, Nye Tian had planned to ask Ni Zichen to wait until he returned from the domain of endless snow. However, from the look of it, that was no longer possible. "You don't have to worry. We have the ability to protect ourselves, and we've found a companion," Ni Zichen said calmly, knowing Nye Tian's hesitation. "All right." Nye Tian could only nod. He could not stop Ni Zichen, and Rui Qianyu's situation was urgent. In another 2 months, the Forbidden Ice Stone's Desolation Forbidden Power would take effect. "Brother Nye." At that moment, a familiar voice emerged and Lin Feng appeared. "Huh!" Nye Tian was stupefied but immediately understood. Ni Zichen was talking about Lin Feng. Nye Tian hadn't expected Lin Feng to be so close to the Ni siblings. But this way, he was much more at ease. Lin Feng was very strong. As long as they didn't encounter strong cultivators from the Shumi world, he could protect them. Nie Tian and Lin Feng talked for a while, and asked the latter to protect Niz Chen and Ni Jianming. Nie Tian didn't tell Lin Feng about Niz Chen and Ni Jianming's real identities. That was Niz Chen and Ni Jianming's business. After a while, the three figures left together. Nie Tian. At this time, the Sword Elder's voice suddenly sounded. His voice was trembling as if he was terrified. Sword Elder, are you all right? Nie Tian was stunned for a moment and asked. How did I? Mr. Jian's voice was shaking. Did I sense the Xian Long bestial saint's qi from that little boy? Yes. Nie Tian didn't find Mr. Jian's reaction strange. Ni Jianming had recognized the ink dragon sword before. Since Mr. Jian had already sensed it, Nie Tian didn't hide it and told him about Ni Jianming's identity. He really is the reincarnation of the Xian Long bestial saint. Mr. Jian was stupefied for a while and finally reacted. Mr. Jian, do you know the Xian Long bestial saint? Asked Nie Tian when he saw Mr. Jian's reaction. Sort of, said Mr. Jian in a solemn way. He seemed to remember many things, but he didn't continue talking. Mr. Jian didn't explain too much, so Nie Tian didn't ask too much. Instead, he asked, Mr. Jian, what kind of race is the Blood Demon clan? Nie Tian was still worried that the escaped Blood Demon Spirit Slaughtering clan would become a threat. Blood Demon clan. Mr. Jian pondered for a while and said, one of the 12 ancient demon clans. They don't have a body but a half-soul body. They have to devour the souls of other warriors or live in the souls of other warriors in order to survive. Moreover, the Blood Demon clan has high requirements for souls. Ordinary warriors' souls are not good enough. Only warriors with the power of bloodlines are suitable for the Blood Demon clan. I see. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed. He had never heard of such a strange clan. No wonder the Blood Demon Spirit Slaughtering clan made a deal with Yu Rushuang and wanted to devour Yu Jin's soul. The Blood Demon Spirit Slaughtering clan must have lived in Yu Jin's soul, but it hadn't been able to completely devour her soul. However, after the destruction of Heavenly Devil Palace, Yu Jin had not been found. Nie Tian was worried that Yu Jin's soul had been devoured by the Blood Demon Spirit Slaughtering clan. However, Nie Tian didn't have time to worry about Yu Jin. He planned to go to the Mystic Moon Empire first to see if there was any news of Emorushi and the others. If there was no news, he would return to the 3,000 small worlds. After that, he would go to the Snow Domain ice field. Having made up his mind, Nie Tian didn't delay any longer. He immediately went to the Heavenly Sword Hall and bid farewell to Lu Lingyun and the others. Boom. However, at that moment, a huge explosion sounded in the sky. Then, a spatial crack appeared in the sky, as if the sky had been torn apart. Nie Tian's eyebrows furrowed as he suddenly thought of something and had a bad premonition. He could feel the aura of the teleportation formation from the spatial crack. It was obvious that someone had come from the Heaven Realm. Heaven Realm? Nie Tian's eyes trembled violently. The first thought that came to his mind was that his identity had been exposed. Previously, when the Divine Sword recognized him as its master, the Ink Jade Dragon Sword's sword intent was too terrifying. It soared into the sky and broke through the restrictions of the laws of space. At that time, Nie Tian had his suspicions. However, he was just hoping for a fluke. Now, it seemed that he was too optimistic. What is that? The people of Heavenly Sword Pavilion exclaimed when they saw the spatial crack in the sky. Many people had a look of horror in their eyes. They had no idea what was happening. Oh no! Nie Tian's heart sank. If it was someone from the Heaven Realm, they would definitely come for him. If things went wrong, Heavenly Sword Pavilion would also be in trouble. Heavenly Sword Pavilion was not a weak force in the Sumeru world. However, in front of someone from the Heaven Realm, it was nothing. Thinking of this, Nie Tian took a step forward and soared into the sky. He actually dashed towards the spatial crack. With a strike of the sword, a majestic sword will spread out like a tide, condensing into a huge sword shadow in the void, blasting towards the crack in the space. Chapter 942. Seeing the space-time spiritual array appearing in the spatial crack, everyone on the ground couldn't help but tremble, and many people's backs were dripping with cold sweat. These people would never have thought that one day they would see someone from the heaven realm. Although the three figures in the spiritual array had restrained their aura, they gave off a kind of majesty that people didn't dare to look up to. Nye Tian was in midair, and when he saw the teleportation spiritual array appear, his eyes narrowed slightly, and he rushed over even more crazily. Boom! The sword light whizzed past and bombarded the spiritual array. The huge spiritual array shook slightly, but it wasn't destroyed. Huh! The leader of the spiritual array was a middle-aged man. He was stunned suddenly, and his gloomy eyes looked at Nye Tian. His whole body was full of killing intent, and suddenly a mighty force rolled out. Buzz! The whole space was affected by the force, and with a roar, it was as if the space itself had become a weapon, and it pressed towards Nye Tian. The power of law. Nye Tian frowned suddenly. The person who came was really someone from the heaven realm, and he was a heavenly emperor realm expert. He directly used the power of law. What a terrifying force! The crowd on the ground felt a vast mighty force descending from the void, as if it was going to destroy the world, and they couldn't help but show a look of horror. This is... Lu Lingyun and the others also came out at this moment, and their eyes trembled deeply when they felt the power in the space. This kind of power was clearly released by a heavenly emperor realm expert. Heaven shrouding totem, open! Nye Tian's eyes suddenly shrank, and a huge starlight emerged behind him, filling the sky into a large net, covering the whole world, and at the same time, wrapping the teleportation spiritual array. Bang! A muffled sound and a huge palm force descended. Nye Tian's body lit up with dragon scales, and he forcibly withstood the blow. His figure swayed, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. However, he wasn't seriously injured, and his complexion was still normal. The newcomer was taken aback, but in the next moment, he understood something. He laughed mockingly and said, "Brat, I didn't expect you to know how to use spirit formations. It seems that not all martial artists of the Shumi world are trash." The reason why Nye Tian was able to withstand that person's attack was because he had immediately activated the sky shrouding barrier, greatly weakening the opponent's strength. Otherwise, he would not have been able to withstand a frontal attack from a heavenly emperor powerhouse. It's this sword intent. Behind the middle-aged man, a young man in black said, "Lord Wei, this is the person we want to kill. It's this kid?" The middle-aged man, Wei Shuchen, was slightly taken aback, but his eyes were filled with strong disdain. He said, "A mere trash in the 5th level of the heaven realm is worth this lord's trip. I really don't know what he's capable of to make Lord Zhou so nervous. Lord Wei, this kid's enchantment has some problems. Furthermore, to be able to make Lord Zhou pay attention to him, he's definitely not simple. We mustn't be careless." The young man in black was called Zhang Yuan. Clearly, he was more cautious than Wei Shuchen. Nye Tian looked at the three people in front of him, his heart involuntarily trembling. Wei Shuchen's strength was a 1st-level heavenly emperor, while the other two people's strengths were 9th-level heaven realm. These three people's strengths, under normal circumstances, any one of them was sufficient to insta-kill him. Fortunately, he used the sky shrouding barrier to seal off a stretch of heaven and earth when the three people just appeared. Currently, the three people's strengths were all suppressed by the barrier. At most, they only had 6th or 7th level heaven realm strength. Humph! Merely an enchantment that suppresses strength. Watch me break it. Right at this time, that martial artist who had not spoken all along suddenly laughed coldly. Immediately after, he directly attacked. Rumble! A palm striking out, a terrifying palm force bombarded on the barrier. The surrounding several tens of thousands of meters trembled violently. But the sky-shrouding barrier was actually completely unscathed. Amen? Wei Shuqian trio was taken aback at the same time, not expecting that the sky-shrouding barrier was so horrifying to actually be able to resist the tremendous palm force. You guys are from the heavenly realm? Nie Tian heaved a sigh in relief inwardly. As long as the sky-shrouding barrier was not broken, he would have the strength to fight. Just now, the three people were unable to break the barrier before it was laid down. Now, wanting to break the barrier from the inside was very difficult. Hearing these three people's conversation, they did not know Nie Tian's identity. They only came to the spatial world to kill a person and did not know that the person they wanted to kill was the heavenly realm's former #1 war god. But Nie Tian could also figure it out even if he used his toes to think that these people must be sent by Luo Chenhun. Even if it was not Luo Chenhun himself who assigned it, it must also be under Luo Chenhuan's instructions. Looks like the news that he was still alive was already leaked. The three people in front of him were merely the first batch of killers. If he could kill these three people, there would be even more terrifying enemies coming next. Brat, you are quite knowledgeable to know that we are from the heavenly realm. Wei Shuqian's eyes were filled with disdain. He did not put Nie Tian in his eyes at all. He said in a cold tone, "If you are sensible, then surrender. Maybe this lord will leave you with a whole corpse. If you are not sensible, I will definitely make sure you die without a corpse." As the cold voice fell, a strong killing intent spread out like a solid substance, filling the air with killing intent. Wei Shuqian did not know why the people behind him wanted to kill Nie Tian, but he knew that Nie Tian must die. Then let's do it. After confirming the identity of the people, Nie Tian did not waste any more words. He had to kill the three people in front of him before the sky-shrouding barrier disappeared. Otherwise, it would be terrible. "Renihong, you break the barrier. Zhang Yuan, let's do it." Wei Shuqian smiled cold. As soon as his voice fell, his figure directly pressed over. Suddenly, a mighty aura rolled over like a tsunami, giving people a suffocating sense of oppression. Nie Tian did not dare to be careless. The long sword in his hand broke through the air, and he used one of the three extreme styles of the Ao sword art, Sword Heart's End Moon. Puff! A huge sword intent blasted out. The sky-shrouding barrier increased Nie Tian's strength, but under his sword, he could not exert the power at all. It was directly absorbed by Wei Shuqian. Water attribute. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. He immediately understood that Wei Shuqian was a water attribute martial artist. There was a layer of water shield around him. His sword intent could not break the opponent's water shield. "Brat, you can suppress my strength, but you can't suppress my primordial spirit." Wei Shuqian laughed wildly. A long sword condensed from water mist appeared in his hand. Water convergence sword. Nie Tian's eyes sank again. He did not expect Wei Shuqian to also be a swordsman. Moreover, his swordsmanship strength had reached the peak of sword soul. "Brat, obediently accept your death." On the other side a roar sounded. It was Zhang Yuan. This person was also a swordsman. A long sword burning with flames appeared in his hand. Green fire sword. At the same time, another martial artist, Renihong, emitted a faint light. It was the power of the seal. He wanted to use the power of the seal to break the sky-shrouding barrier. Nie Tian's face sank. He had to quickly get rid of Wei Shuqian and Zhang Yuan. Otherwise, if Renihong broke the sky-shrouding barrier, he would no longer have any strength to resist. Water convergence kill. Green fire cut. Chapter 943. High up in the sky, the crack in space had already disappeared. Wei Shuqian and the other two were trapped in the barrier. Wei Shuqian and Zhang Yuan attacked at the same time, wanting to kill Nie Tian in one move. The two sword essences of water and fire suddenly arrived. One was scorching hot, the other was surging. The two of them attacked with great tacit understanding. They froze the space, leaving Nye Tian no room to retreat. He could only face them head-on. "Be careful!" The crowd on the ground saw that Nye Tian was in danger and exclaimed. After the incident with the heavenly demon cult, Nye Tian was already a hero in their eyes. Although they did not know why these Heaven Realm warriors would appear, no one wished for anything to happen to Nye Tian. Nye Tian was attacked by two people at the same time. His eyes were as calm as water, without the slightest fluctuation. 8 Desolation Sword. In the next moment, his figure moved. Sword essence surged out from his body. The surrounding frozen space shook violently and was torn apart. Bang! Bang! Two muffled sounds. Wei Shuqian and Zhang Yuan were forced to retreat at the same time. The two of them were stunned. They did not expect Nye Tian's strength to be so tyrannical. What a strange sword essence! The two of them were swordsmen. They could feel the terrifying power from Nye Tian's sword essence. It was like a suppressed beast. Once awakened, it would definitely be earth-shattering. Nye Tian forced the two of them back. However, he was also affected by the sword essence. 2 bloody wounds appeared on his body. He looked slightly embarrassed. However, he was very satisfied with the power of the sword pattern. It was completely out of his expectations. Although Wei Shuqian and Zhang Yuan's strength was suppressed, they were still above the 6th level of Heaven Realm. Moreover, they were both warriors at the pinnacle of Sword Soul. Their joint attack was broken by Nye Tian's sword. One could imagine how terrifying the sword pattern was. The crowd on the ground trembled violently. They were deeply shocked by Nye Tian's strength. At this moment, Lu Lingyun and the others appeared and stood in the void. Seeing Nye Tian's sword just now, Lu Lingyun was shocked. At this moment, he understood that the difference between him and Nye Tian was like heaven and earth. When he was defeated by Nye Tian, he was still very unconvinced. But now, he was convinced. Boss! Jean de Bao's figure also appeared. When he saw Nye Tian fighting against 3 people from the Heaven Realm by himself, he could not help but reveal a worried expression. He had always trusted Nye Tian. No matter how terrifying the enemy was, he rarely worried about Nye Tian. But it was different this time. Nye Tian's opponents were martial artists from the Heaven Realm, 1 1st-level Heavenly Emperor, 2 9th-level Heaven Being. Such a lineup was enough to shock the entire Shumi world. "Don't get close," Nye Tian growled, indicating that Jean de Bao should not get close to the barrier. "Brat, you can't even protect yourself, yet you still have the mood to care about others?" Wei Shuqian smiled coldly and stabbed out with her sword again. Mist seemed to appear in the air and a cold aura spread out. Nye Tian seemed to hear the sound of waves ringing in his ears, deep and vast, shocking him. His body moved and he struck out with his palm. Suddenly, there was a deafening clap of thunder, and the power of purple-gold lightning rolled out, filling the entire sky-shrouding enchantment. Rumble! Lightning rolled and moved. The purple-gold lightning was akin to an astonishing wave, crushing over with a loud bang. Wei Shuqian cried out in surprise, her figure retreating hastily, but she was still struck by the power of lightning. Crack, crack. A series of crisp cracking sounds out. The water-restraining shield around Wei Shuqian was actually blasted open by the power of lightning. Several deep bloody wounds appeared on her body. "Lord Wei!" Zhang Yuan could not help crying out in shock when he saw Wei Shuqian's hand. "I'm fine." Wei Shuqian's gaze quivered, her face revealing a sinister look as she roared angrily. "Stinking brat, this lord underestimated you, to actually be able to break even my water-restraining shield." The corners of Nye Tian's eyes twitched too. He was just testing it out earlier. He did not expect that the power of lightning could actually really restrain Wei Shuqian's water-restraining shield. "I'll kill you!" Zhang Yuan was first stunned, then immediately gave a sinister roar. Massive flames rose up all over his body, setting the prairie ablaze into a sea of fire. A sword slashed out. An enormous fire snake rumbled over toward Nie Tian in midair. You're courting death. Nie Tian's eyes flashed with a frightening killing intent. His body immediately trembled, and 12 giant light swords surged around his body. He could not wait any longer. The power of the heaven-shrouding boundary was slowly weakening. He had to strike with his life on the line. The 12 heaven-slaying sword formation was activated. Nie Tian's figure condensed in the sword formation, instantly absorbing the power of the sword formation. The sword absolute heaven slash down. The frightening sword actually caused the heaven-shrouding boundary to shake. Ah! Zhang Yuan screamed. The sword flames around his body seemed to feel a terrible threat and suddenly shrank. In the next moment, the life-threatening sword bombarded down. The huge sword shadow directly cut the sea of fire in half. The raging flames were like a tide, parting to both sides. Not good! Wei Shuqian saw this scene and was suddenly stunned, screaming. At the moment of desperation, Zhang Yuan desperately stabbed out with his sword. At the same time, his body slightly staggered. Swoosh! The sword shadow fell. In a flash of blood, Zhang Yuan's arm was directly cut off. Ah! My arm! A tragic howl sounded. Zhang Yuan could not help but retreat, unable to stand. What a strong force! Wei Shuqian was momentarily stunned, his expression stiff. Originally, he thought that Nie Tian was just an ant that he could crush easily. He did not expect the latter's strength to be so strong. Nie Tian's eyes turned cold and directly locked on to Wei Shuqian. Zhang Yuan had already lost the ability to fight, so it was Wei Shuqian's turn next. Lord Wei, the barrier is broken. At this moment, a joyful voice rang out. Ren Yihong shouted. Rumble! Before he finished speaking, the strange power of the seal surging above the heaven-shrouding totem became violent. Then, with a loud bang, the heaven-shrouding boundary was directly broken. Pft! The moment the boundary was broken, Nie Tian's figure trembled slightly, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Brat, it's time for you to die. Wei Shuqian felt that the pressure from the boundary had disappeared. He immediately laughed and a terrible murderous intent appeared in his eyes. Oh no! Nie Tian's complexion was pale, secretly crying out in his heart. Although Zhang Yuan was seriously injured, Wei Shuqian's combat strength did not decrease. His strength recovered to first-level Heavenly Emperor. How could he resist? Lord Wei, slaughter this punk and take revenge for me. Zhang Yuan roared fiercely, a vicious look on his face. Okay. Wei Shuqian roared angrily, furious killing intent surging. Immediately, the void trembled. A terrifying pressure appeared. A water screen appeared in the space, the power of laws flowing inside. Stinking brat, you've angered this lord. Wei Shuqian's eyes revealed a vicious intent as he hooted arrogantly, Today, not only are you going to die, everyone present has to die. When the ruthless voice fell, everyone's hearts suddenly trembled, their faces revealing a tremendous look of horror. In Wei Shuqian's eyes, the spatial world's martial artists were all trash. If he wanted to kill, he would kill. As long as he felt carefree in his heart, it was fine. Is that so? Nie Tian's gaze fell slightly, a hint of resolve flashing across in his eyes. A crimson sea of fire appeared behind him. The hellfire furnace appeared. Chapter 944. Above the void, the hellfire crucible appeared behind Nie Tian. The sky behind him directly spread into a sea of fire. The surrounding temperature rose rapidly. The air appeared to be in a dense state as if it was about to be ignited. Humph humph! Wei Shuqian saw the hellfire crucible behind Nie Tian and felt a scorching heat assaulting his face. But he smiled coldly and said, "You want to rely on this flame pill cauldron to contend with me?" The heaven-shrouding barrier was broken. Wei Shuqian's strength recovered to the first-level Heavenly Emperor. He could use the true heaven and earth laws. He would not place Nie Tian in his eyes at all. Even though the hellfire crucible made him feel a slight oppressive aura, He absolutely would not believe that a mere 5th-level Deva martial artist could pose a threat to him. The difference in strength between the two was too great. This was a gap that no talent or martial technique could make up for. The crowd below was also stunned, not knowing what Nie Tian was doing. Lilingyun's figure stood several thousand meters away, looking at Nie Tian in fear. His forehead was covered in beads of sweat. The person Nie Tian was facing was a Heaven Realm martial artist. A genuine Heavenly Emperor Realm powerhouse. In the Sumer world, it was an existence that crushed everything. Under such circumstances, Nie Tian did not retreat. It seemed like he wanted to continue fighting. In Lilingyun's view, this was simply crazy. Lilingyun was nervous to the extreme right now. Because he knew that once Nie Tian died, the entire Sky Sword Pavilion would also be destroyed. Wei Shuchen said just now that not only did he want to kill Nie Tian, he would also kill everyone present. Heaven Realm martial artists looked down on Sumeru World martial artists. These words were definitely not said for fun. Nie Tian, you must hold on. Lilingyun prayed in his heart. But his expression was ugly to the extreme. Clearly, he did not believe Nie Tian. The hellfire crucible behind Nie Tian soared with terrifying flames. The scorching aura made people feel suffocated. He naturally knew that the current hellfire crucible could not contend with Heavenly Emperor Realm martial artists. But the soul slave Nie Chio inside the crucible had the strength to contend with Heavenly Emperor Realm martial artists. Although using Nie Chio had a certain risk, Nie Tian had no choice but to use it. Die! Just at this moment, Wei Shuchen roared in rage. Her aura gushed forth as a gigantic water screen appeared in the sky. It was as though the Milky Way was crashing down. The immense aura was incomparably vast as it pressed down on Nie Tian. Nie Tian could feel the energy of laws circulating in the air, suppressing his elemental meridians. This was the terror of the power of laws. It had an absolute suppression on a martial artist's Yuan meridians. Haha, this brat is dead meat. When Zhang Yuan saw this scene, he actually let out a hysterical laugh. In his mind, he had already imagined the scene of Nie Tian being directly crushed. Nie Tian stood on the spot. His body was like a huge rock that didn't move at all. There wasn't the slightest ripple in his eyes, and it was so calm that it caused one's heart to palpitate. Have you given up resisting? When Wei Shuchen saw that Nie Tian did not move at all, she thought that the latter had given up resisting. She could not help but laugh maniacally, and her expression became ferocious. The gigantic water screen surged forth, and the cold, killing intent descended. At the moment of life and death, Nie Tian's eyes suddenly flickered. His body trembled, and a figure appeared from the hellfire furnace. It was the soul slave Nie Chio. Kill him! Nie Tian's expression was ice-cold as he spoke. Nie Chio's eyes congealed. His entire body released a powerful flame. It was actually the Starry Sky Saint flame. At the same time, it contained the power of the fire attribute laws. So, Nie Chio's figure shot out like an arrow, his entire body wrapped in the Starry Sky Saint flame. He shot out and directly pierced through the gigantic water screen towards Wei Shuchen. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. Wei Shuchen did not even have the time to react. He only felt a scarlet-red flame flash past him, and his chest was pierced through, causing blood to spurt out. Ah! Feeling the unbearable pain in his chest, Wei Shuchen screamed out in pain. He had no idea what was happening. It's a heavenly emperor! At this time, Renrenhang was the first to react. He pointed at Nie Chio and exclaimed, "Who would have thought that a heavenly emperor stage powerhouse would suddenly appear in Nie Tian's hellfire furnace? How is this possible?" Wei Shuchen's first reaction was that it was impossible. With a face of astonishment, the blazing figure once again attacked him. "Save me!" In shock, Wei Shuchen screamed out, but Zhang Yuan and Renrenhang did not dare to go near him. They were so scared that their faces turned pale white and retreated. When Nietio saw the scarlet-red blood, his clear eyes suddenly became ruthless. His figure transformed into a flame and rushed forward. Voila! Wei Shuqian was unable to resist at all, and was instantly torn apart by Nietio. His blood sprayed out like rain. A heavenly emperor stage powerhouse died just like that. Wei Shuqian would never have dreamt that he would actually lose his life in the Mount Shumi world. Before he died, his eyes were filled with unwillingness and fear. He truly died with everlasting regret. The scene in front of him caused Nie Tian to swallow a mouthful of saliva. He never thought that Nietio's fighting strength would be so terrifying, to be able to directly suppress an opponent of the same level. It was as though the power of the starry sky Saint Flame was unleashing a strange power on Nietio's body. Woo! After killing Wei Shuqian, Nietio released a low growl from his throat. He suddenly turned his head. His eyes were actually bloodshot, surging with a terrifying killing intent. Oh no! Nie Tian was startled. He immediately realized that something was wrong, and his face changed. Corpse Demon Lord and Sword Elder had warned him before, Nietio's soul force was too strong, and could not be erased. Once the ruthless qi in his body was stimulated, he would completely lose control. Nietio was much stronger than Wei Shuqian, and if he truly lost control, it would be a calamity for the Mount Shumi world. Woo! Nietio released another mournful cry. He stared coldly at Nie Tian, the ruthless qi in his eyes becoming denser and denser. Nie Tian, you must definitely control him. The Sword Elder was also frightened and anxiously said, calm down, you must definitely calm down. Nie Tian's mind tensed up. He stared at Nietio and slowly approached him. He was facing a homicidal maniac, and any movement from the opponent was enough to kill him. Nie Tian slowly approached, his eyes slowly releasing a gentle mental force, calming the latter's berserk state. Gradually, Nie Tian and Nietio were only about 10 m apart. Woo! Just at that moment, Nietio released a strange cry, like a frightened wild beast. He pounced towards Nie Tian. At such a close distance, Nie Tian's gaze darkened, and a powerful mental force was released, pressuring him. Nietio's eyes turned sluggish. He stopped moving, the blood-red color in his eyes slowly retreated, regaining clarity. He stood there blankly, like a child who did not know what to do. Who? Nie Tian heaved a sigh of relief. It was a close shave. Go back, he said indifferently, and Nietio's figure returned to the Hellfire Furnace. Chapter 945. Those two guys escaped. Nie Tian narrowed his eyes. He did not notice that Zhang Yuan and Ren Yihong had already escaped. Both of them were at the 9th level of the Heaven Realm, the pinnacle of the Shumi world. However, Zhang Yuan's arm was cut off by Nie Tian, and he was heavily injured. Ren Yihong seemed to be a sealer and was not very strong. It would not be easy for the two of them to stir up a huge storm in the Shumi world. Nie Tian, your sword was infused with the power of the sword runes. That person will need at least a few months or even half a year to fully recover. Don't worry about them now. Sword Elder said with a frown, I'm curious. Why would the Heaven Realm people come after you? The Heaven Realm Celestial Realm was an upper world. To enter the Shumi world, one needed to pass through the planar restriction. The planar restriction above the Shumi world and the Heaven Realm's divine realm was far stronger than the planar restriction between the 3,000 small worlds and the Shumi world. If one wanted to pass through this kind of high-level planar restriction, they would need a rank 9 spacetime teleportation spirit formation. Moreover, it was accompanied by great risk. The Heaven Realm Celestial Realm people did not hesitate to take such a huge risk and even sent out a Heavenly Emperor assassin to kill Nie Tian. What enmity did Nie Tian have with these people that they would go to such great lengths to kill him? Sword Elder, these people are indeed after me. But I cannot tell you why now. Please forgive me. Nie Tian said sincerely. He was the reincarnation of the Heaven Realm's #1 war god. This was his biggest secret. Even Mo Rushi did not know about it. Only Rui Qinyu knew about it when she was in the bloody massacre ancient tomb. No one else knew about it. All right. Sword Elder was not angry. He just nodded. Everyone had their own secret. Just like him, there were many things he did not tell Nie Tian. Boss, are you all right? At this time, Jean de Bao walked over with a nervous expression. Nie Tian shook his head and smiled, indicating that he was fine. The situation just now was indeed very dangerous. If there had been the slightest mistake, Nie Tian wouldn't be able to speak happily at this moment. Lu Lingyun and the people from the Sky Sword Pavilion were dumbfounded. Their expressions were sluggish, and they couldn't react for a long time. The shock that Nie Tian gave them was too great. If not for them seeing it with their own eyes, who could believe that a heavenly Emperor Realm powerhouse was actually annihilated by Nie Tian in a twinkle? Lu Lingyun came back to his senses, his face covered in cold sweat. He came to Nie Tian's side, not even daring to look him in the eye, nor did he know what to say. Pavilion Master, I'll be leaving the Heaven Sword Pavilion soon. Please tell Jian Chen on my behalf. Nie Tian did not beat around the bush and said directly. He had to leave the Sky Sword Pavilion immediately. Staying here would only bring danger to the people of the Sky Sword Pavilion. Although Wei Shuchen was dead, the other two were still alive. They would definitely not give up on this mission so easily. Yes, Mr. Nie. Lu Lingyun was respectful. He now only had respect for Nie Tian from the bottom of his heart. He had already placed the latter on the same level as the Sky Sword Ancestor. Nie Tian nodded slightly, then came to Sun Hai's side. The latter was a little panicked, and did not know how to face Nie Tian. Not long ago, Sun Hai treated Nie Tian as an equal, but now even Lu Lingyun was very respectful. He really did not know what to do. Nie Tian only smiled faintly, asked Sun Hai to take care of Jean de Bao, and then took his leave. Nie Tian asked Jean de Bao to stay in the Sky Sword Pavilion. If the latter followed him, it would only be more dangerous. After doing this, Nie Tian did not stay any longer. His figure moved, and he turned into a stream of light and disappeared. Lu Lingyun, Sun Hai and the others stared at the place where Nie Tian disappeared. They were dumbfounded and only reacted after a long time. Sun Hai never thought that the youth from the 3,000 small worlds would actually grow to such a terrifying level in such a short time. After leaving the Sky Sword Pavilion, Nie Tian's figure sprinted towards the Black Moon Empire. Thinking about it, Nie Tian had already been in the Sumi world for several months. Mo Rushi and the others should have finished their seclusion. If they came to the Sumi world, they would definitely appear in the Black Moon Empire. Half a day later, at the Black Moon Empire's Mount Azure Dragon. Whoosh! A figure shuttled through the dense forest. His speed was extremely fast, and he actually left behind several afterimages in the air. This figure was none other than Nie Tian. In just half a day, he arrived at the Black Moon Empire from the Sky Sword Pavilion. Nie Tian had already made up his mind. He would stay in the Black Moon Empire for half a month. If he did not see Mo Rushi and the others within half a month, he would make a trip back to the 3,000 small world. At this time, Nie Tian's figure froze, as if he had sensed something, and his brows furrowed inexplicably. At the same time, a few thousand meters away, a group of people appeared. There were about a dozen of them, and every one of them had an aura of the first level of the Heaven Realm. These people were full of hostility. Only people who had been fighting for a long time would have this kind of hostility. Among this group of people, the leader was a young man. His aura was not very strong, but he had a devilish face, and his eyes were releasing an inexplicable hostility. In the middle of this group of people, several figures were restrained by shackles, and their hands and feet were all wearing heavy shackles. That devilish young man looked at a restrained red-haired girl from time to time, and his eyes were burning with lust. If Nie Tian was here, he would be able to recognize this red-haired girl at a glance. She was none other than his fiancée, Emo Rushi. And the three people with Emo Rushi were Duanmulu, Guwuyo, and Chioshan. The four of them came to the Sumi world a few days ago. Originally, they wanted to go to the Sky Sword Pavilion to find Nye Tian, but not long ago they were captured by this group of people. Miss Rushi, it's all my fault. I couldn't protect you. Behind Emo Rushi, Chioshan said with a face full of guilt. They were too strong. How can you be blamed? Emo Rushi forced a smile and comforted Chioshan. Miss Rushi, as long as you obey me, not only will I let you go, I will also provide you with the best cultivation resources, and the people around you will also receive the best treatment from me. What do you think? The devilish young man turned around and looked at Emo Rushi with a wretched smile. Shameless! Emo Rushi scolded, and didn't even look at him. Shameless! The devilish young man laughed instead of getting angry. He shouted arrogantly, "This king likes shamelessness. As long as we arrive at Mystic Moon City, this king will arrange everything, and you will see what true shamelessness is. This king will make you feel so good that you can't stop. Ha ha! Bastard!" Duanmulu couldn't bear it anymore. He roared, and a terrifying killing intent appeared in his eyes. He threatened, "You pervert, if you dare to touch even half a finger of my master's wife, I will definitely kill you. You're courting death." The devilish young man's eyes darkened, and a poisonous glint shot out from his eyes. He waved his hand, and a sharp force flew out and attacked Duanmulu. This devilish young man's strength was at the 9th level of heavenly evolution, while Duanmulu's strength was only at the 1st level of heavenly evolution. This casual palm was enough to take the latter's life. Duanmulu! Emo Rushi and the others screamed, and their faces instantly turned pale. Chapter 946. At the moment of life and death, Duanmulu suddenly sensed a powerful sword intent piercing through the air. His eyes trembled slightly as he suddenly felt that this sword intent was inexplicably familiar. A hint of joy appeared on his face as he shouted, "Teacher!" The sword intent was just right and easily blocked the ominous-looking young man's fatal blow. Immediately after, a figure descended, releasing a towering rage all over his body. The overflowing killing intent spread out for thousands of meters, and the surrounding spirit beasts immediately scattered in fright. "Nye Tian! Mr. Nye! Mr. Emo Rushi, Guwuyo, and Chioshan's voices sounded almost at the same time. Rushi! When Nye Tian saw that Emo Rushi was shackled with shackles on her hands and feet, his body trembled violently, and a force flew out through the air. Crack! With a crisp sound, the shackles on Emo Rushi's body were directly broken. Crack! Crack! Almost at the same time, another 3 crisp sounds rang out, and the shackles on Duanmulu and the other 2 were also broken. What a powerful aura! When the surrounding people saw this scene, their hearts inexplicably trembled. The shackles were reinforced by a 5th-order spiritual array, and Nye Tian broke the shackles without moving at all. His strength was unimaginable. Nye Tian! Emo Rushi cried tears of joy and threw herself into Nye Tian's arms. She could no longer suppress the grievances in her heart, and hot tears flowed out like a fountain. Feeling the trembling of the girl in his arms, Nye Tian's eyes shot out terrifying flames of anger. Emo Rushi was his woman. If someone made Emo Rushi cry, he would make that person bleed and spare his life. Who are you?" The ominous-looking young man looked at the silver-haired young man in front of him with a face full of horror, and his voice was filled with unconcealable trembling. "The person who will kill you," Nye Tianling said coldly. He did not care who the other party was, he must die. "Kill me?" The devilish young man was taken aback as great fear flashed across his eyes. However, he soon calmed down and said, "I am Lai Chong, the 3rd prince of the Scorching Sun Empire. If you dare to kill me, the Scorching Sun Empire will never let you off." "The Scorching Sun Empire?" Nye Tianling smiled coldly. The corners of his mouth curled into a strange arc, and the killing intent in his eyes became even sharper. The Blazing Sun Empire and the Dark Moon Empire were both first-rate forces in the Shumi world. If the person standing in front of Lai Chang was someone else, bringing up the name of the Blazing Sun Empire might be of some use. Unfortunately, the person in front of him was Nie Tian. Putting aside the fact that this person was a prince of the Blazing Sun Empire, even if he was the emperor of the Blazing Sun Empire, he would still die. Protect His Highness. The people of the Scorching Sun Empire sensed Nie Tian's murderous intent and immediately roared in unison. Killing intent surged from all over their bodies, protecting Lai Chang like a shield. These people were the most brutal warriors, and they had killed countless people. At this moment, their auras merged together, and an enormous killing intent spread out, as if an invisible giant hand was pressing down. Mo Rushi and the others could not withstand this enormous killing intent, and they all retreated, their faces flushed and their breathing ragged. Nie Tian. Mo Rushi's pretty face was pale, and she pulled Nie Tian. Clearly, she was terrified. I'm fine. Nie Tian looked at Mo Rushi and nodded slightly, his eyes filled with domineering confidence. Mo Rushi looked at Nie Tian, and her heart instantly calmed down. She nodded heavily. At this moment, Mo Rushi felt that as long as this man was by her side, no one would ever be able to hurt her. Boom! Nie Tian took a step forward, and sword intent burst out from all over his body. The void instantly trembled, and the killing intent in the air was directly shattered by him. These people were all at the first level of the sky-human realm. When dozens of them worked together, it was extremely terrifying. However, in front of Nie Tian, they could only be considered as dregs. In fact, they couldn't even be considered as dregs. The dozens of warriors were taken aback, and then their eyes darkened. The killing intent in their bodies became even more intense, and everyone's aura was released. It actually linked together, and the powerful aura was terrifying. Kill that silver-haired brat, kill him for this king. At this time, Lai Chang screamed crazily. Kill! Dozens of warriors roared in unison, and their voices were like thunder. Their surging aura blasted out, and the invisible aura pressed down with earth-shattering momentum. These people were all desperados on the battlefield, and they had experienced countless life and death situations. At this time, they would not show any mercy. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed slightly, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Although these people's methods were brutal, and their aura was fierce, they could not stop his sword. 8 Desolation Sword! A cold roar sounded, and Nie Tian was fearless. The long sword in his hand stabbed out, and accompanied by a thunderous explosion, the surging sword intent turned into countless sword lights, tearing everything apart. Boom! A dull sound rang out, and the sword shadows shattered everything, leaving only the most violent sword intent in the air. Ah! In an instant, countless screams rang out, and a glaring rain of blood floated in the air. Figures instantly fell to the ground, dead. One sword, just one sword, and Nie Tian killed dozens of Heaven Realm warriors with one sword. Lai Chang's eyes widened, and his originally arrogant face became completely lifeless. His face was filled with deep fear. The bloody and glaring scene in front of him was like a bolt of lightning, completely stunning him, and even his breathing seemed to stop. Dozens of Heaven Realm warriors died just like that? Lai Chang could not believe the scene in front of him. The other party was only a young warrior in his 20s, so how could he have such terrifying power? And it seemed that this silver-haired warrior had only casually used one sword, and did not use his full strength. Just how terrifying was the person in front of him? Not only Lai Chang, but Mo Rushi and the other two were also completely stunned. Their mouths were wide open, but they could not make a sound. Originally, they had been worried about Nie Tian, but now that they thought about it, it was really unnecessary. After not seeing him for a few months, Nie Tian's strength had already grown to a level that they could not imagine. You, who are you? Lai Chang's tongue began to spin, and his teeth began to tremble. I said before, I am the person who will kill you, Nie Tianling said coldly, and the killing intent in his eyes was suffocating. Lai Chang felt as if he had been struck by lightning. His body trembled, and his face was as pale as paper. He was so scared that he could not speak. Plop! In the next instant, Lai Chang could no longer bear the fear of death. His knees weakened and he knelt on the ground begging, I beg you, don't kill me. I am the third prince of the Blazing Sun Empire, and my elder brother is one of the 3 kings. As long as you let me go, I will give you whatever you want. Nie Tian's expression was as cold as ice. Other than killing intent in his eyes, there was not the slightest hint of mercy. One of the 3 kings? The corner of Nie Tian's mouth twitched, and there was a hint of playfulness in his eyes as he said, Even if your elder brother is a 4 peaks Meru, you still have to die. When the cold word die was uttered, Lai Chang's small face stiffened, and he could not say another word. Swoosh! Right at this moment, a sword intent swept past, stirring up a streak of blood. Lai Chang's entire body suddenly trembled, and all the vitality in his body was extinguished, and he fell to the ground dead. At the moment of his death, Lai Chang's eyes were filled with thick fear. Clearly, he did not even know how he died. Chapter 947. After killing Lai Chang, Nie Tian's gaze was calm, and the murderous intent in his eyes gradually disappeared. Mo Rushi and the others were completely stunned as they looked at the bloody corpses all over the ground. They simply could not imagine that Nie Tian's strength was actually so terrifying. Lai Chang was at the 9th level of the Heavenly Evolution Realm, and those dozens of martial artists were all Celestial Realm powerhouses, but they were all killed by Nie Tian in the blink of an eye. Just how terrifying was Nie Tian's strength? Rushi, are you all alright? Nie Tian turned around and went to Mo Rushi's side. He was only relieved after confirming that the latter was fine. If anything happened to Mo Rushi and the others, Nie Tian would definitely destroy the Blazing Sun Empire. Teacher! Duanmu Lu walked over. He had already regained his composure, but his eyes were filled with guilt. He said apologetically, This disciple was unable to protect Master's wife. Please punish me, teacher. Nie Tian helped Duanmu Lu up and said with a faint smile, This matter has nothing to do with you. Your strength is limited. It's time for you to increase your strength. With that, a ball of light appeared in Nie Tian's hand and floated to Duanmu Lu's side. This is an ancient sword intent inheritance that I obtained by accident. It's very suitable for you. The moment the ball of light appeared, the surrounding space was enveloped by a majestic sword intent. Even the air seemed to have stopped. This sword intent inheritance was obtained by Nie Tian from the Iron Sword Demon King in the Forbidden Land of Wind and Cloud. The Iron Sword Demon King was an ancient swordsman. His sword intent was very terrifying and vast, and it was very compatible with Duanmu Lu's 8 extreme sword intent. Duanmu Lu felt the terror of the sword intent. His throat moved and he said excitedly, Thank you, teacher. Nie Tian smiled faintly and asked Duanmu Lu to put away the sword intent. He looked at Qiu Shan, who had many wounds on his body. It was obvious that he had struggled with all his might. Qiu Shan was currently the strongest among the 4 of them. He was at the 2nd level of the Heavenly Evolution Realm. Mo Rushi and the other 2 were all at the 1st level of the Heavenly Evolution Realm. They had only been in the Sumi world for a few days, and it was already not easy for them to reach the Heavenly Evolution Realm. Teacher, Qiu Shan said in a deep voice. He also felt somewhat guilty. It's good that you're fine. Nie Tian smiled faintly, but the corners of his mouth curled up into a cold smile. Lai Chang was the 3rd prince of the Blazing Sun Empire. He had captured Mo Rushi and the others, and now he was killed by Nie Tian. However, this matter was not over yet. The Blazing Sun Empire would also have to pay the price. Nie Tian came to Lai Chang's side. With a wave of his arm, an interspatial ring appeared on his hand. He sensed that there were many spirit pills and crystals in the ring, but he was not interested in any of them. What interested him the most was a map. Nie Tian unfolded the map. He was stunned when he saw it, but his lips curled into a smile. He murmured, "I annihilated the heavenly demon cult, but you want to divide the Black Moon Empire. How can there be such a good thing in this world?" The map in his hand was the map of the Black Moon Empire, but it had been divided into several regions. They were labeled Blazing Sun Empire, Absolute Heaven Sect, Konoha Empire, Alchemists Guild, Blacksmiths Guild, and so on. It was obvious that these forces had already discussed to divide the Black Moon Empire. What surprised Nie Tian was that the Sky Sword Pavilion did not have a share on it. The heavenly demon cult was annihilated by the Sky Sword Pavilion. Moreover, the Sky Sword Pavilion's strength was not weaker than the other forces. Logically, the Sky Sword Pavilion should have a share. What made Nie Tian even more curious was that there was an unknown area on the map that didn't belong to anyone. This area took up more than half of the Black Moon continent. He didn't know what kind of power was able to divide up such a large area. In that case, I will go to the Black Moon Imperial City to join in the fun. Nie Tian kept the map and passed all the spirit pills and crystals to Qiu Shan. Those spirit pills were useless to him, but to Qiu Shan and the others, it was helpful for their cultivation. After all, their strength was very low. Nie Tian did not stay any longer and headed straight for the Black Moon Imperial City. At the same time, in the palace hall of the Black Moon Imperial City, two figures sat in the middle of the palace hall. Their faces were calm and they had a faint smile on their faces. They were sipping tea carefully and their eyeballs kept moving, as if they were thinking about something. These two people were none other than the former Black Moon Empire Alchemists Guild President, Jia Guang, and the Blacksmiths Guild President, Hua Jia. The heavenly demon cult destroyed the two guilds' forces in the Black Moon Empire, but these two people successfully escaped. Now, they were making a comeback, but the heavenly demon cult had been annihilated in the Sky Sword Pavilion. At this moment, they were planning to divide the Black Moon Empire. Below Hua Jia and Jia Guang sat four other people. They were the Heaven-Severing Sect's Vice-Sect Leader Chen Haoyu, the Blazing Sun Empire's Crown Prince Lai Wu, the Wood Leaf Empire's Great General Mu Tieba, and a masked man in black. These people looked relaxed. The various forces had already coordinated. Next, everyone just needed to nod and sign, and the Black Moon Empire would be completely divided. Everyone, the Black Moon Empire will be divided according to the map. Does anyone have any objections? Jia Guang took a sip of tea and said with a faint smile, "No problem." The people below him nodded in unison, expressing their agreement. "Since no one has any objections, let's sign." Jia Guang nodded and gestured to Hua Jia. The latter took out a contract scroll. As long as everyone imprinted their mental power on the contract scroll, the contract would come into effect. Chen Haoyu, Lai Wu, Mu Tieba, and the man in black stood up and prepared to sign the contract scroll. Bang! At this moment, a muffled sound suddenly rang out. A figure flew out and directly smashed into the stone pillar above the main hall, causing the entire hall to tremble. Everyone was stunned. A guard of the main hall was actually injured by someone. The guard did not die. He struggled to stand up and opened his mouth, but no words came out. Who is so daring to cause trouble here? Mu Tieba was the most impulsive. With a roar, he released the strength of a fifth-level heaven-human martial artist. A vast aura surged out of the main hall. Boom! In the next instant, the void suddenly shook violently. An even more violent aura pressed down. Mu Tieba's aura could not withstand the other party's pressure and directly collapsed. Mu Tieba stumbled a few steps back and fell on his butt. His face was as red as a monkey's butt, and there was no need to mention how unsightly it was. Such a powerful aura! Jia Guang, Hua Jia, and the others were all stunned. Their eyes trembled. The newcomer directly used his aura to force Mu Tieba back. His strength was unfathomable. Courting death. Lai Wu, the crown prince of the Scorching Sun Empire, frowned. Just as he was about to explode in anger, he was stopped by Huijia. Huijia felt an unusually familiar aura, but his brows were tightly knitted. He did not dare to believe his own senses. Instead, he shouted, "Who are you? Can you show yourself? Old man Hua, don't you recognize your old friend?" In the next moment, a mocking voice rang out in the void. Shortly after, a silver-haired figure appeared. He was like a sharp sword, releasing a sharp aura. Chapter 948. A figure suddenly appeared in the palace hall of the Dark Moon Empire. Everyone was stunned as they stared at the newcomer in astonishment. "It's really you." Huijia rubbed his eyes as if he couldn't believe it. In fact, he had already sensed that it was Nie Tian's aura earlier, but he couldn't believe it because the newcomer's aura was too strong. It was on a completely different level from the Nie Tian he knew. Now that Nie Tian's figure appeared, he had no choice but to accept the truth. The newcomer was really Nie Tian. But this was too exaggerated. In just a few months, Nie Tian's strength had skyrocketed to such a terrifying level. When Nie Tian left the Dark Moon Empire, he was only at the 9th level of the Sky Evolution Realm. Now, in just 3 months, he was already at the 5th level of the Sky Human Realm. This speed could only be described as shocking. Nie Tian. At this time, Jia Guang also recognized Nie Tian. His reaction was even more exaggerated. His eyes widened and he almost stopped breathing. He couldn't believe the scene in front of him. He didn't expect that Nie Tian would really come out of the forbidden land of wind and cloud. He also didn't expect that Nie Tian's strength would skyrocket to such a terrifying level. Moreover, he appeared in the palace hall of the Dark Moon Empire. The few of them looked at Nie Tian in fear, not knowing his purpose in coming here. "Brother Nie Tian." Finally, it was Huijia who broke the silence. He laughed heartily and said, "I heard that you passed the path of sealed swords of Sky Sword Pavilion. Is that true?" "Yeah," Nie Tian answered indifferently, his face as calm as ever. No one could tell if he was happy or sad. The path of sealed swords of Sky Sword Pavilion was very famous in the entire Shumi world. For thousands of years, countless swordsmen had their sword hearts sealed by the path of sealed swords. The fact that Nie Tian could pass the path of sealed swords naturally shocked the entire Shumi world. Previously, Huijia had some doubts and thought it was just a rumor. But now, it seemed that everything was true. He had even heard that Nie Tian had once defeated the Heaven Sword Pavilion Master with a single sword strike. He did not believe it before, but now he was absolutely certain. Just now, Nie Tian had used his aura to repel Mu Tieba. His method was too ruthless, and it was enough to intimidate everyone. "Brother Nie, why have you come to the Black Moon Empire?" Fire Armor glanced at the guard beside him, and asked with an awkward smile. "Elder Hua, I'm not here to target you." Nie Tian's eyes flickered and he cut to the chase. The Black Moon Empire was destroyed by the Heavenly Demon Cult, and the Heavenly Demon Cult was destroyed by the Heaven Sword Pavilion. When the Black Moon Empire was destroyed, the other forces did not appear. Now that the Heavenly Demon Cult has been destroyed, do they all want a piece of the pie? This. Huijia's face stiffened and he said, "Nie Tian, actually, we've already informed Pavilion Master Lilingyun, but Sky Sword Pavilion doesn't want to get involved," so Nie Tian's eyes narrowed. He did not think that Lilingyun would give up on the benefits that were already in his hands. However, on second thought, everyone in Sky Sword Pavilion was a swordsman, and they indeed should not get involved in worldly conflicts. "I want what Pavilion Master Lu doesn't want." Nie Tian frowned and said, "What do you mean?" Mu Tieba took a step forward, his face full of anger. Just now, he had been forced back by Nie Tian, and he had lost quite a bit of face. Now that he heard Nie Tian also wanted to get involved, He could no longer hold back and roared, "You are just one person, and you have no backing. What right do you have to stand shoulder to shoulder with us?" Mu Tieba's face was full of anger, and his eyes were filled with malice. He was right. The people present did not represent themselves, but the forces behind them. Nie Tian was just one person. Did he really think he could contend with a first-rate force? Based on what? The corner of Nie Tian's mouth curled up, and he laughed instead. Based on the fact that I killed Yu Rushuang. Is that enough? You killed Yu Rushuang. As soon as Nie Tian's voice fell, everyone present was stunned. At this time, Mo Rushi and the others also appeared in the hall. Seeing Nie Tian's domineering attitude, they did not say anything. Although they did not know who Yu Rushuang was, to be able to make these people so surprised, she had to be an extraordinary person. The atmosphere in the hall was silent for a few seconds, and then a burst of insolent laughter suddenly rang out. A brat in the 5th level of the celestial human realm killed the heavenly devil cult master. This is the funniest joke I've ever heard. Ha ha! The ear-piercing laughter rang out in the hall. That person's face was full of disdain, and he completely treated Nie Tian's words as a joke. Nie Tian's gaze darkened as he looked at the person laughing. It was the vice sect master of the heaven-severing sect, Chen Haoyu. I heard that Yu Rushuang was a martial artist in the 8th level of the celestial human realm. Only a 4th peak Sumeru could suppress her. How did you kill her? Another voice rang out. Lai Wu's face was full of disdain, clearly not believing Nie Tian's words. Arrogant brat, Yu Rushuang clearly died at the hands of the Heavenly Sword Patriarch. What does that have to do with you? Mu Tieba laughed arrogantly, his face full of disdain. However, Huijia and Jiaguang looked at each other and did not say anything. They had a feeling that Nie Tian was speaking the truth. Thinking back, Nie Tian had been able to fight against Mo Baiming, who was in the 5th level of the celestial human realm. Now that he was in the 5th level of the celestial human realm, it was not strange that he could kill Yu Rushuang, who was in the 8th level of the celestial human realm. Yu Rushuang had not died at the hands of Nie Tian, but it had a lot to do with him. If he hadn't forced Yu Rushuang into a desperate situation, how could Lin Feng have had the chance to kill her in one blow? Moreover, in Nie Tian's eyes, Yu Rushuang was nothing. He had even killed a heavenly emperor not long ago. Are you done laughing? Nie Tian's face was calm as he suddenly turned to look at Chen Haoyu. His eyes flashed with killing intent as he spoke coldly. What do you want? Chen Haoyu's face turned pale as he was enveloped by the killing intent. The corner of Nie Tian's mouth twitched into a cold smile. He said playfully, Chen Haoyu, should I still call you Vice Sect Master Chen or King of the West Yu? His calm voice caused everyone to be stunned, staring at Chen Haoyu in astonishment. What do you mean? Chen Haoyu's eyes trembled violently, his lips already starting to tremble. You know very well what I mean. Nie Tian's face was calm, but his eyes were filled with intense killing intent. He said coldly, Chen Haoyu, now that the heavenly demon cult is gone, you think that no one knows your identity anymore, so you can still be the vice sect master of the heaven-severing sect? What are you talking about? I don't understand. Sweat beaded on Chen Haoyu's forehead, and his eyes were filled with despair. He had never imagined that Nie Tian would know his true identity. In fact, not only did Nie Tian know Chen Haoyu's identity, but he had also seen him in the Sword Pagoda of Sky Sword Pavilion. You don't understand? Nie Tian retorted. A cold light suddenly flashed in his eyes as he said coldly, If you don't understand, then die. As his cold voice fell, a sword intent shot out, slicing Chen Haoyu's throat. Chapter 949. Nie Tian's sword intent sealed his throat, and Chen Haoyu died on the spot. The scene fell into a deathly silence as everyone stared dumbfoundedly at the corpse on the ground. No one would have thought that Nie Tian would be so tyrannical, actually killing on the spot. Every single person here represented a first-rate force. Nie Tian directly said that Chern Haoyu was the heavenly demon cult's king of the West Yu, and while the latter was still trying to defend himself, he had already become a corpse. No matter what, Chern Haoyu was the heaven-severing sect's vice-sect master. Was Nie Tian not afraid of the heaven-severing sect's revenge? However, they did not know that Nie Tian did not put the heaven-severing sect in his eyes at all. If the heaven-severing sect's sect master was really blind, he did not mind erasing the heaven-severing sect from the Shumi world. Nie Tian, you killed vice-sect master Qin? Jia Guang was stunned for a long time before he finally reacted, his face full of astonishment. So be it. There's nothing to be surprised about. Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, Now can we talk about how to divide the Black Moon Empire? Yes, we can. Jia Guang was stunned for a moment, then nodded almost subconsciously. Nie Tian was too domineering. If he was not given a share, he would most likely kill everyone here. What about you guys? Nie Tian's gaze swept across Mu Tieba and the others. They felt their hearts tremble, and they all agreed woodenly. Mu Tieba had seen many experts, but none of them had a gaze as fierce as Nie Tian's. This guy is too terrifying, we cannot offend him, Mu Tieba said in his heart. Lai Wu and the black-clothed man both nodded, indicating that they agreed to Nie Tian's intervention. Nie Tian's gaze stopped on the masked black-clothed man for a moment, and he was slightly stunned before returning to normal. Since the people of the heaven-severing sect are already dead, how about we give the land that originally belonged to the heaven-severing sect to Lord Nie Tian? Lai Wu pointed at the map and was the first to speak. I have no objections. Mu Tieba chuckled, indicating his agreement. The man in black nodded. However, Hua Jia and Jia Guang looked at each other and did not say anything. They understood Nie Tian very well, and they knew that with his personality, he would definitely not just want that small piece of land. Lord Nie Tian, what do you think? Lai Wu's eyes flickered as he looked at Nie Tian. His tone was respectful. Nie Tian didn't say anything. His eyes were fixed on the map. This Lai Wu was very shrewd. He directly gave the territory that was originally given to the heaven-severing sect to Nie Tian. This way, the other factions would not suffer any losses, and the heaven-severing sect would only seek revenge on Nie Tian in the future. However, Lai Wu's plan was good. It was a pity that he had found the wrong person. Nie Tian was not a person who would be satisfied with just a place. Since he had gone through so much trouble to get here and offended so many forces, he naturally had to demand an exorbitant price. Here, 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 and here. I want all of these places. The corner of Nie Tian's mouth twitched. He pointed at the map and demanded the heaven-severing sect, the Blazing Sun Empire, the Konoha Empire, and that unmarked area. On the map, he only left a few places for the Alchemist Guild and the Equipment Crafting Association. The rest of the places were all taken. Lai Wu and the others were stunned. They stared at Nie Tian in astonishment. Their expressions seemed to be saying, "Are you crazy?" Nie Tian wanted to take all the places other than the two major guilds as soon as he opened his mouth. This was simply insane. Opening his mouth so wide, was he not afraid of choking? Hua Jia and Jia Guang were stunned. They knew that Nie Tian would demand an exorbitant price, but they never imagined that it would be so big. Forget about the people from the heaven-severing sect. After all, Chern Haoyu was already dead. However, the people from the Konoha Empire, the Blazing Sun Empire, and the black-robed man in front of them, how could they tolerate Nie Tian doing this? Actually, according to Nie Tian's original plan, he intended to take over the entire Black Moon Empire. However, the Alchemist Guild and the Equipment Crafting Association had also paid a certain price. Moreover, he had a good relationship with Hua Jia Guang, so he could not swallow the territories of the two major guilds. Elder Hua, Elder Jia, what do you two think of my proposal? Nie Tian smiled faintly and stared straight at Hua Jia Guang. The two of them swallowed their saliva but did not answer. Instead, they looked at the masked black-robed man at the same time. Impossible! At this time, Mu Tieba roared and shouted, "Are you crazy? Why don't you swallow the entire Black Moon Empire? You don't agree?" Nie Tian turned around and looked at Mu Tieba. His eyes were filled with coldness and a sharp killing intent enveloped him. Mu Tieba immediately felt a chill, as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. His whole body trembled inexplicably and he staggered, almost falling down. He could clearly feel the killing intent from Nie Tian. If he said no, Nie Tian would definitely kill him without hesitation. Mu Tieba's face was as pale as paper. He subconsciously looked at the black-robed man, not daring to speak. "If you don't speak, I'll take it that you agree." Nie Tian smiled faintly and turned to look at Lai Wu. He said directly, "You better agree immediately. Otherwise, I will make you suffer the same fate as the owner of this ring." As he spoke, a ring appeared in Nie Tian's palm. On it was engraved the word, Lai. Lai Wu was stunned and immediately cried out, "This is my third brother's ring. Why is it in your hands?" The ring on Nie Tian's hand was obtained from Lai Chong. Lai Chong had once said that his big brother was one of the three kings. Nie Tian guessed that the Lai Wu in front of him was the big brother that Lai Chong had mentioned. Lai Wu looked to be around 30 years old and his strength was actually of the fifth heaven realm. This talent was indeed not bad. Lin Feng was also one of the three kings and had the same strength as Lai Wu. However, he was younger than Lai Wu, so his talent was slightly higher. "I killed him," Nie Tian said indifferently. His expression didn't change at all. "You killed him?" Lai Wu frowned. His whole body was filled with anger and his eyes were also filled with coldness. Nie Tian didn't explain anything. In any case, Lai Wu wouldn't listen. He directly said, "You are not my opponent. If you want to take revenge, you will only die in vain." This time, Nie Tian wanted to be strong to the end. If Lai Wu insisted on taking revenge, he absolutely wouldn't be lenient. "Stinking brat, you're too insolent," Lai Wu roared. His whole body was trembling. His killing intent rose and he suddenly attacked. A terrifying raging fire intent bloomed in the air. A flaming palm smashed towards Nie Tian. "Courting death," Nie Tianling said coldly. His eyes became cold in an instant and he directly punched out. Boom! The void suddenly shook. A tyrannical yuan qi surged out and a golden fist shadow appeared in the air. Boom! The fist and the palm collided. A muffled sound rang out. The power of the golden fist shadow exploded. It was like a gale sweeping away fallen leaves. The flaming palm was forcibly torn apart. A mournful scream sounded. Lai Wu's whole body flew out and collided into a huge stone pillar behind him. He actually smashed in. Chapter 950. In the main hall, everyone looked at Nie Tian in a daze, holding their breaths. Shock. Indescribable shock. The scene just now was too strange. No one saw clearly what was going on. Nie Tian and Lai Wu were both at the 5th level of Heaven Human Realm, but the two of them fought and victory was decided in one move. Lai Wu, a monstrous genius of the spatial world's 3 kings level, lost miserably in the hands of Nie Tian in just one move. In that move just now, Lai Wu attacked abruptly and already had the upper hand. But even so, he was still sent flying by Nie Tian's punch. Nie Tian attacked in haste, and did not use his full strength at all. If he used his full strength, Lai Wu's outcome would definitely be a corpse. After a long time, the stone pillar that was almost smashed through shook. A bloody figure crawled out, struggling with his last breath, and finally stood up. Everyone looked at the battered Lai Wu, their eyes could not help but tremble. Nie Tian was too strong, exceeding everyone's expectations. "Do you agree now?" Nie Tian looked at the bloody Lai Wu and asked coldly. Although this person was one of the 3 kings, his strength was far below Lin Feng's. He was even weaker than Nangong Ba, one of the 6 evils. From this, it could be seen that even among the famous geniuses of the spatial world, there were many people who were just there to make up the numbers. Lai Wu's body swayed, his mouth opened wide, but he could not speak. If you don't speak, then I'll take it as you agree. Nie Tian smiled faintly, his eyes revealing strong confidence. At this time, his figure turned slightly, and his gaze landed on that black-clothed man. Seeing that Nie Tian seemed to be about to speak to that black-clothed man, Hu Jia and Jia Guang's expressions suddenly changed, and they hurriedly waved their hands, indicating that Nie Tian should not provoke this person. But Nie Tian pretended not to see it, and his eyes carried a trace of playfulness as he said, "You haven't spoken yet. Are you also tacitly agreeing to my suggestion?" On the Black Moon Empire's map, there was an unmarked region that occupied more than half of Black Moon. It was obvious that this area belonged to the faction represented by the black-clothed man in front of them. To be able to conquer more than half of the Black Moon Empire, the power behind this black-clothed man was extremely terrifying. It was definitely not inferior to the two large guilds. The black-clothed man's gaze trembled slightly. His entire face was covered by the mask, but his expression was clearly seen by Nie Tian. Nie Tian possessed the starry sky eyes, a mere mask could not block his vision. That person's face trembled, and he finally opened his mouth. His voice was very ear-piercing, like the sound of iron tools rubbing against each other. "Brat, do you know who I am?" "I don't know what your name is," Nie Tian said with a faint smile, his face as calm as ever. "But I know your surname is Qianlong, right?" His tone was calm, but at the same time, there was a hint of mockery. In fact, from the moment Nie Tian entered the hall, he had already noticed the man in black, and had already guessed his identity. He could sense the bloodline power from the black-clothed man, and it was a bloodline power that he was very familiar with. Divine Prison Black Flames. Divine Prison Black Flames was the bloodline power of the Qianlong family. Nie Tian had seen this power from Qianlong Yinghong and Qianlong Yingzheng. Nie Tian did not expect that someone from the Qianlong family would also appear here. The region on the Black Moon Empire's map was actually the Holy Light Empire's territory. No wonder the other factions did not dare to object. Nie Tian's guess was right. The black-clothed man was from the Qianlong family. Furthermore, this black-clothed man had a very high status. He was the younger brother of the current emperor of the Holy Light Empire, Qianlong Bo. Qianlong Bo's eyes narrowed slightly. He could not help but be surprised. He did not expect that Nie Tian would still dare to be so impudent despite knowing his identity. "Brat, you should know when to stop. This king has no objections to you taking over the territory of the Heaven-Severing sect and the other two families. However, you cannot take over the region on the map," Qianlong Bo said coldly with a strong pressure in his voice. "That's because it belongs to the Qianlong family." The name Qianlong represented absolute authority in the Holy Light domain. No one dared to challenge this authority. Hu Jia and Jia Guang became nervous when they sensed Qianlong Bo's anger. Qianlong Bo was completely different from Lai Wu and the rest. The Holy Light Empire behind him was the strongest faction in the entire Shumi world. Hu Jia signaled to Nie Tian with his eyes, hoping that he would take a step back. It was already very good for him to take over the territory of the Heaven-Severing sect and the other two families. However, Nie Tian still pretended not to see it. The playful smile on his face deepened. "Is that so?" Nie Tian looked at Qianlong Bo and said in a deep voice, "What if I insist?" Qianlong Bo's face sank. The anger in his eyes suddenly turned into killing intent. He said coldly, "Brat, the Qianlong family is not something you can afford to offend. There's only one outcome for provoking the Qianlong family: death. Can you afford this price?" His voice was low and deep, filled with a thick threat. "Qianlong family? Holy Light Empire?" Nie Tianling sneered with a hint of disdain in his eyes. Where were the people of the Holy Light Empire when the Black Moon Empire was annihilated by the heavenly demon cult? Where were the people of the Holy Light Empire when the people of the Black Moon Empire were massacred? When the Black Moon Empire needed the Holy Light Empire the most, you guys didn't appear. Now that the heavenly demon cult has been annihilated, you guys have appeared. A random masked man wants to take away half of the Black Moon Empire? How can there be such a good thing in this world? Every single word was forceful and resounding like a clap of thunder in the great hall. Huijia and Jiaguang's eyes trembled. They didn't expect Nie Tian to be so domineering in the face of the Qianlong family. Brat, you're courting death. Qianlong Bo's eyes darkened. He let out a furious roar and his killing intent surged. A terrifying aura was released and filled the entire hall. Huijia and the rest felt a powerful pressure. Their eyes trembled and they quickly retreated. 7th level heaven human realm? Nie Tianling sneered. Instead of retreating, he advanced. The void shook violently and the two auras collided. A visible shockwave spread out. Qianlong Bo felt a vast force pressing down on him. His body swayed and he was actually forced to take a few steps back. On the other hand, Nie Tian was as steady as a boulder and as unmoving as a bell. In the clash of their auras, Qianlong Bo was actually quite a bit inferior. Nie Tian, Huijia and Jiaguang were both stunned. The aura surging out from Nie Tian was even stronger than Qianlong Bo's. It was terrifying. How is this possible? Qianlong Bo stabilized his body. His face was slightly flushed and the shock in his heart was written all over his face. He was a 7th level heaven human realm cultivator and had a powerful bloodline power. How could he lose to Nie Tian, who was only a 5th level heaven human realm cultivator in terms of aura? Nothing is impossible. Nie Tianling sneered and took a step forward. The aura around him became even stronger. Qianlong Bo felt as if there was an invisible sword stabbing at him. His breathing became hurried. Chapter 951. Now, do you agree? Nie Tian's words were like a death knell, echoing throughout the hall. Qianlong Bo's body trembled slightly, and his eyes revealed a hint of fear. He could feel that Nie Tian's killing intent was definitely not a bluff. If he dared to refuse, Nie Tian would definitely kill him. Nie Tian, do you really want to become enemies with the Holy Light Dynasty? Qianlong Bo calmed himself down and told himself that he could not show weakness at this moment. Right now, he was not only representing himself, but also the entire Holy Light Dynasty. The people from the 2 major guilds and several first-rate forces were watching from the sidelines. If he backed down, what would they think of him? This would greatly damage the authority of the entire Holy Light Dynasty. It was simply a joke for the mighty Holy Light Dynasty to be afraid of a 5th-tier celestial warrior. Humph! The corner of Nie Tian's mouth twitched, and a strange smile appeared on his face. You should go back and ask the Holy Light Ancestor if he's willing to become enemies with me. There was still a battle between Nie Tian and the Holy Light Ancestor. It seemed that the Holy Light Ancestor had not made it public, so no one else knew about it. If Qianlong Bo knew about this, he would probably have a different attitude towards Nie Tian. Qianlong Bo's eyes narrowed. Nie Tian had actually mentioned the Holy Light Ancestor in front of everyone, and there was not the slightest respect in his tone. Instead, there was a hint of threat. This was intolerable. Brat, I'd like to see what ability you have to dare to provoke the Qianlong royalty. Qianlong Bo was enraged, and his killing intent surged. Black flames rose from his back, and a chilling aura immediately spread in the air. Divine prison black flames! Huijia and Jiaguang exclaimed at the same time when they saw the black flames behind Qianlong Bo. It was rumored that the Qianlong family's bloodline power was extremely powerful, and Qianlong Bo was one of the top experts in the Qianlong family. Could Nie Tian be his match? Bloodline power? Nie Tian's expression remained calm without a trace of fear. He smiled and said, I wonder how your bloodline is compared to Qianlong's? You know the crown prince? Qian Bo was startled. He didn't expect Nie Tian to know about Qian Long. Huijia and Jia Guang were also taken aback. Looking at Nie Tian's expression, it seemed like he did not take Qian Long Yingjing seriously. With Nie Tian's current strength, there was indeed no need for him to fear Qianlong. The latter was merely the leader of the 9 demons, while Nie Tian had just defeated Lai Wu, one of the 3 kings, with a single move. A hint of disdain appeared at the corner of Nie Tian's mouth as he looked at Qian Longbo provocatively. Make your move. Courting death. Qian Longbo couldn't take it anymore. With a furious roar, the black flames behind him grew more violent, and countless black lights shot towards Nie Tian like dancing black tentacles. Watch out! Huijia and the others screamed when they saw this. Qian Longbo was truly enraged. His first move was to unleash the full power of the divine prison's black flames. He wanted to kill Nie Tian in one move. Humph! Facing Qian Longbo's fatal attack, Nie Tian's lips curled up in disdain. He released the power of thunder and lightning from his body. Terrifying purplish-gold lightning condensed into the shape of a giant dragon. In an instant, the entire hall shook violently. Qian Longbo felt the dragon's might rushing towards him. The divine prison's black flames around him seemed to have sensed the threat and began to contract. Break for me! Nie Tian took a step forward and let out an angry roar. The lightning dragon suddenly pressed down, and a violent explosion rang out in the void. The black flames were unable to withstand the overwhelming pressure and were forcibly torn apart, dissipating in the air. Ah! In the next moment, a miserable scream rang out. Qian Longbo's figure was sent flying. When he landed on the ground, a glaring line of blood appeared on the ground. One move, another move. Nie Tian had defeated Qian Longbo. The entire hall fell into a deathly silence once again. Huijia and the others widened their eyes. What happened just now was like a dream. They were unable to react at all. Qian Longbo, the lord of the Holy Light Sky Empire, the younger brother of the Holy Light Emperor, a top expert of the Shumi world, was defeated. Not only was he defeated so miserably. With a single move, Nie Tian had rendered him powerless to fight back. What kind of terrifying power was contained in Nie Tian's body? Where was Nie Tian's limit? Huijia and the others trembled violently as if they were looking at a monster. Is this your strength? Nie Tianling looked coldly at Qian Longbo, who was lying on the ground. The contempt in his eyes was self-evident. You want to take away half of the Black Moon Empire? Dream on. Qian Longbo's strength was not weak. Unfortunately, the divine prison black flame was suppressed by the power of lightning. In front of Nie Tian, he could not withstand a single blow. You! Qian Longbo struggled to stand up. Just as he was about to speak, he felt a tightness in his chest and vomited a mouthful of blood. Humph! Nie Tianling sneered. Suddenly, his figure flashed and appeared in front of Qian Longbo. The latter's face turned pale, and he subconsciously retreated. What do you want? Qian Longbo felt the coldness in Nie Tian's body and his voice began to tremble. Nie Tian, don't be rash. Huijia and Jia Guang shouted at the same time. They were afraid that Nie Tian would do something crazy. No matter what, Qian Longbo was a member of the Holy Light Heaven dynasty, and his status was not low. If Nie Tian killed him on impulse, it would definitely infuriate the Holy Light Heaven dynasty, and Nie Tian would be in big trouble. Humph! Nie Tian smiled coldly. Don't be nervous. I won't kill you. I just want to ask you a few questions. Qian Longbo was slightly stunned. What do you want to ask? Nie Yuro, Chiu Linger. Nie Tian's eyes darkened. Do you know these two people? They are the princesses of our celestial empire. Are you planning something bad by asking about them? Qian Longbo's face was slightly nervous, even panicked. The two people Nie Tian mentioned were the two princesses with the highest status in the Holy Light Empire. They were personally guided by the Holy Light Ancestor. This was a treatment that even the crown prince did not have. There were even rumors that Princess Yuro was a martial artist who had awakened the Qianlong phantom seal, just like the holy light ancestor. Nie Tian smiled faintly and relaxed a lot. The more nervous Qianlongbo was, the more it meant that Nie Yuro and Qiu Ling had a high status in the Holy Light Empire. "What's your name?" Nie Tian asked after thinking for a while. "I am Qianlongbo, the younger brother of the Holy Light Empire's emperor," Qianlongbo said in a clear voice. "Very good." The corner of Nie Tian's mouth twitched as he said, "Tell Patriarch Holy Light that the duel has been brought forward, and that I'll visit the Holy Light dynasty in half a year. Tell him to wait for me." Battle? Qianlongbo was stunned. He did not understand what Nie Tian was saying. Chapter 952. Nie Tian's voice was ice-cold, and his face was even colder. "You." Qianlongbo opened his mouth wide, but when he saw the coldness in the eyes, he could only swallow his words. This time, he had lost a lot of face. As a prince of the Holy Light Empire, a martial artist in the 7th level of the heaven-human realm, he was told to get lost. If Qianlongbo didn't still have a bit of rationality in his heart, he would definitely fight with Nie Tian. However, he had to be calm at this moment. He was no match for Nie Tian. He could only return to the Holy Light Empire and tell the Holy Light Emperor about what had happened here. Once the Emperor was furious, Nie Tian would have to spit out what he had swallowed. Humph! Seeing Qianlongbo's gloomy face, Nie Tian naturally guessed what the latter was thinking. He said coldly, "Qianlongbo, do you think you can take revenge on me after returning to the Holy Light Empire? Don't think too much. If the Holy Light Ancestor knows that I have taken over the Black Moon Empire, I think he will be very happy." Nie Tian didn't care about the Holy Light Empire at all, which was why he was so domineering. And he knew that the Holy Light Ancestor was a smart man and would not fall out with him for a small Black Moon Empire. Qianlongbo's eyes froze at once, and he took a deep look at Nie Tian with deep fear in his eyes. He didn't dare to stay any longer and left directly. After Qianlongbo left, Lai Wu and Mu Tieba were petrified on the spot, without any expression. They had seen everything that had happened just now. Every word and action of Nie Tian had shocked them to the bottom of their hearts. Nie Tian wasn't even afraid of the Holy Light Empire, let alone the Scorching Sun Empire or the Konoha Empire. The two had been thinking about revenge before, but now they didn't dare to think about it even if they had 10,000 gallbladders. The people of the Holy Light Empire should get lost. What are you still doing here? Nie Tian glanced at Lai Wu and Mu Tieba and said coldly. The two of them felt as if they had been struck by lightning. Their bodies swayed, and they immediately reacted. Their faces turned pale as they limped away. Seeing that Qianlongbo and the others had all left, Fire Armor and Jia Guang's foreheads were covered in beads of sweat. If it wasn't for the fact that they were friends with Nie Tian, he might have swallowed the entire Mystic Moon whole. "You two don't have any objections now, right?" Nie Tian walked over and looked slyly at Huijia and Jia Guang. "No objections." Both of them nodded in unison. They didn't dare to have any objections at this point. Nie Tian nodded his head slightly. Suddenly, a ball of light appeared on his palm. Instantly, a powerful true intent spread out, and a mysterious aura filled the entire hall. "This is..." Huijia's eyes widened in shock when he sensed this powerful aura. He froze on the spot and opened his mouth wide, but no words came out. "What a powerful true intent!" Jia Guang's gaze turned sluggish as he cried out in shock. Emo Rushi and the rest didn't know what the ball of light in Nie Tian's hand was, but they could feel that it was something extraordinary. "Elder Hua, this is the true intent of Tool's path in the three-legged mysterious cauldron," Nie Tian said directly. "Oh my God! You broke the spiritual seal of the mysterious cauldron?" Huijia screamed in disbelief. "Yes." Nie Tian nodded his head slightly and passed the true intent of Tool's path to Huijia. Our previous agreement is still valid. This true intent is yours. Huajia's entire body swayed, and he almost fell down in excitement. Elder Hua, there is still a true intent of alchemy in the mysterious cauldron. You are a weapon refiner, so you shouldn't be interested in true intent of alchemy. I'll keep it for myself. That shouldn't be a problem, right? Nie Tian said indifferently. No problem. Of course not. Huajia didn't even think about it and nodded his head repeatedly. To be able to obtain a true intent of Tool's path from the ancient times was already a great gift to him. True intent of alchemy. When Jia Guang heard Nie Tian's words, his throat moved and his eyes turned completely red. He was a rank 8 pill refiner. Of course, he could sense the horror of the true intent of Tool's path in front of him. Huajia could even rely on this true intent to advance to a rank 9 weapon refiner. There wasn't a single rank 9 weapon refiner in the entire Sumeru world. There was still a true intent of alchemy in the mysterious cauldron. It was definitely not weaker than the true intent of Tool's path. If he, Jia Guang, could obtain this true intent of alchemy, he could also advance to a rank 9 pill refiner. Thinking of this, Jia Guang's entire body trembled inexplicably. He looked at Nie Tian with a burning gaze. Grandmaster Jia Guang, I want to make a deal with you. How could Nie Tian not know what Jia Guang was thinking? The corner of his mouth curled up slightly, and his eyes revealed slyness. Lord Nie Tian, please speak. Jia Guang faintly felt that Nie Tian would use the true intent of alchemy to make a deal with him. His entire person was excited. As expected, Nie Tian flipped his palm and another true intent light ball appeared. It was the true intent of alchemy. Gulp! Jia Guang looked at the true intent light ball in front of him and swallowed hard. He felt that his breathing had stopped. He could sense the power of this true intent of alchemy. He could even borrow the power of this true intent to become a peak rank 9 pill refiner. Jia Guang made a decision in his heart. He was willing to use anything to exchange for the true intent of alchemy in Nie Tian's hands. Grandmaster Jia Guang, I've just taken over half of the Black Moon Empire. I have a decision in my heart. I intend to establish a new force, the War God Union. Nie Tian said as he observed Jia Guang's reaction. War God Union. Nie Tian wanted to use the Black Moon Empire as the foundation to build his own force. In fact, he already had this idea a few years ago. It was just that the timing wasn't very ripe at that time. Now that he had obtained the Black Moon Empire, he already had this strength. Then, he could start on this matter. Jia Guang stared at the true intent of alchemy with a burning gaze. It was as though he didn't hear what Nie Tian said. I'd like you to join the Battle God League and become an elder. What do you think? Nie Tian continued, emphasizing his words. War God Union's elder? Jia Guang was stunned. At this moment, he finally understood what Nie Tian was talking about. His face couldn't help but turn ugly. Nie Tian wanted to establish the War God Union and make him an elder. Wasn't this asking him to become the other party's subordinate? He was an inner sect elder of the Alchemist Association. In the entire Sumer world, he was someone with status. How could he become someone else's subordinate? Grandmaster Jia Guang, as long as you're willing to join the War God Union, this true intent of alchemy will be yours. I'm asking you now. Are you willing? Of course, Nie Tian knew what Jia Guang was thinking. However, he didn't explain anything. Instead, he asked directly. Since Nie Tian wanted to establish the War God Union, he was determined to build a super strong organization that could contend with the Heaven Realm. Letting Jia Guang join the War God Union was giving him a super great opportunity. As long as he joined the War God Union, his future achievements wouldn't be any lower than those elders of the Heaven Realm Alchemist Association. Nie Tian would only ask once. He only had one chance. If Jia Guang didn't agree, he wouldn't force him. This, Jia Guang muttered. His expression was very ugly. He was struggling intensely in his heart. Chapter 953. Huijia's sudden words stunned everyone in the hall. Nie Tian narrowed his eyes. He hadn't expected Fire Armor to be so bold. His original plan was to recruit Jia Guang first before convincing Fire Armor to join. However, things were much simpler now that Fire Armor had voluntarily joined. Alliance leader Nie Tian, may I join the War God Alliance? Fire Armor asked solemnly as he looked at Nie Tian. Of course. Nie Tian smiled faintly and agreed readily. Congratulations, Elder Hua. From today onward, you are the first Elder of the War God Alliance. Thank you, Alliance leader. Fire Armor responded loudly and suddenly stepped forward, intending to kneel before Nie Tian. Nie Tian raised an arm to stop Fire Armor. Everyone in the War God Alliance is equal. There's no need to kneel to anyone. Thank you, Alliance leader. Fire Armor was taken aback, but he immediately cupped his hands in thanks. He hadn't expected Nie Tian to make such a rule. Fire Armor naturally had his reasons for voluntarily joining the War God Alliance. He did it for no other reason than because he believed in Nie Tian. It had only been a few months since he first met Nie Tian, but the latter had grown from a nobody to a peak figure in the Meru world. This kind of growth speed was too terrifying. The strength that Nie Tian had displayed just now was no weaker than any leader of a first-rate force in the Meru world. Fire Armor even had a feeling that Nie Tian's current strength would allow him to contend against the four-peak Sumer realm experts. The most frightening thing was that Nie Tian was too young. He was only 20 years old. Once such a figure matured, a mere Meru world would not be able to restrain him. Fire Armor believed that one day, Nie Tian would definitely be able to break through the plane restriction and enter the legendary celestial realm. As long as he clung to the tree that was Nie Tian, his future achievements would be limitless. One had to admit that Fire Armor had good foresight and courage to choose the right person. Master Jia Guang, if you don't agree, then forget it. Seeing that Jia Guang was still contemplating, Nie Tian was getting a bit impatient. With that, he prepared to put away the true meaning of alchemy. He could leave it to others, such as Zhang Yifeng. I agree. Jia Guang panicked and quickly agreed. He was just stunned by Huijia's actions and couldn't react in time. Even Fire Armor had taken the initiative to join the Battle God Alliance, so what was there for him to hesitate about? Very good. Nie Tian smiled faintly and passed the alchemy Dao true intent to Jia Guang. He said, "This alliance head officially announces the establishment of the Battle God Alliance." Huijia and Jia Guang were stunned and slightly speechless. There were only 3 people in total. Was there a need for an official announcement? Nie Tian, on the other hand, was overjoyed. He laughed and said, "The War God Union is still very weak now, but we have a lot of room to grow. Since the War God Alliance was established, it must develop and grow. Otherwise, it would be unworthy of the 2 words, War God." However, following that, Nie Tian said to Huijia and Jia Guang, "Don't reveal anything about the War God Alliance to outsiders. In the future, the Black Moon Imperial City will be the headquarters of the War God Alliance. As for the Black Moon Empire, the 2 of you will be in charge." Nie Tian knew that his current strength was still too weak to contend with the Heaven Realm. Moreover, his identity had been exposed. There would be a steady stream of Heaven Realm assassins appearing. It was not a wise move to establish the War God Alliance with great fanfare. Yes. Huijia and Jia Guang nodded in unison. Nie Tian handed the Black Moon Empire to Huijia and Jia Guang not only because of their identities, but also because of the forces behind them. The Alchemist Guild and the Blacksmith Guild were organizations comparable to first-rate forces. He believed that not many people would have the guts to openly provoke the 2 guilds. "Alliance Master, will the people from the Holy Light Dynasty come looking for trouble?" Huijia asked worriedly. "Don't worry. The people from the Holy Light dynasty will not come to the Black Moon Empire anymore. Nie Tian smiled faintly, his face brimming with confidence. He believed that when Qian Longbo returned, he would definitely tell everything that happened here to the Holy Light Ancestor. The Holy Light Ancestor would not fall out with Nie Tian over a small Black Moon Empire. Even if the Holy Light Ancestor really fell out with him, Nie Tian would not be afraid. The reason why he dared to let Qian Longbo bring forward the battle to half a year later was because he had absolute confidence in his own strength. Not to mention half a year later, Nie Tian could fight with the Holy Light Ancestor now. Huijia felt the strong confidence released by Nie Tian and nodded heavily, knowing that he had chosen the right person. Oh yes, Grandmaster Jia Guang, I need some elixirs to increase my strength. Nie Tian suddenly thought of something and said to Jia Guang. Okay. Jia Guang did not ask further. He took out a dimensional bag and said, Alliance Leader, there are 200 rank 8 elixirs in here. Nie Tian did not stand on ceremony. He took the dimensional bag and threw it to Qiushan. Qiushan and the others were too weak and urgently needed to increase their strength. Next, Nie Tian let Huijia and Qiushan return first to mobilize the strength of the 2 major guilds and prepare to take over the Black Moon Empire. The name of the War God Alliance would not appear in the short term. On the surface, the Black Moon Empire would be taken over by the 2 major guilds. Nie Tian did not want to expose himself. When the situation in the Black Moon Empire stabilized a little, he would leave the Black Moon Empire. Then, Nie Tian left the palace with Emo Rushi and the others. He did not want to stay in the palace. This place was too conspicuous. After a while, Nie Tian and the others arrived at the Jade Mansion. At this time, the destroyed Jade Mansion had been rebuilt. Nie Tian and the others entered the Jade Mansion directly. In the distance, a burly figure appeared. It was Han Tian. Teacher! Seeing Nie Tian appear, Han Tian shouted in surprise. Teacher! The others were stunned. They did not expect that Nie Tian would accept another disciple. Nie Tian nodded slightly and introduced everyone. Duanmu Lu was slightly embarrassed. His senior brother's strength was not as strong as his junior brother Han Tian's. However, he had already obtained the inheritance of Sword Intent. His cultivation speed would be very fast. Nie Tian temporarily stayed in the Jade Mansion. He planned to go to the Snow Domain ice field in a few days. Late at night, the moon was like a silver plate and the sky was full of stars. In the small courtyard of the Jade Mansion, 2 figures snuggled up to each other. Nie Tian and Emo Rushi had not seen each other for several months. There were thousands of words between them, but at this moment, they turned into silent snuggling. Nie Tian, let's not separate anymore, okay? Emo Rushi was like a kitten. She trembled in Nie Tian's arms and said softly, Okay. The corner of Nie Tian's mouth was close to the other's ear. Feeling the girl's warm body fragrance, his whole body was surging with a violent heat. At this time, a cold wind blew. Nie Tian became cold. He whispered in Emo Rushi's ear, Rushi, let me send you back to your room. Emo Rushi nodded lightly. A faint blush appeared on her delicate face. Chapter 954. Inside the room, Nie Tian sat cross-legged and quickly entered into a state of cultivation. His current strength was already at the 5th level of the Heaven Realm, and his body had awakened 250 billion stars, causing the domain origin array to revolve faster. Hellfire Crucible smelt the heavens and earth. Nie Tian gazed at the Hellfire Crucible in the 3rd layer of the Star River, feeling the scorching heat of the astral sacred flame. His heart trembled. As the power of the stars continued to increase, the power of the astral sacred flame became stronger and stronger, and was no longer weaker than the Devil Fire on the Devil Fire list. But Nie Tian knew that the power of the astral sacred flame was only at the initial stage, and its limit would definitely be extremely terrifying, unimaginable. Most likely, only the legendary Devil Fire list's number 1 Devil Fire, the Devil Fire Universe Boundary, could be compared to it. I need to quickly increase my strength. Nye Tian mumbled to himself. As long as his strength increased, the power of the stars in his body would awaken even faster. Coming out from the Star River domain, Nye Tian inspected the 4 star souls on the Star Soul tablet. There were 4 7th-level star souls on the tablet. Hellfire, Hell Armor, Yama Ominous Appearance, Yama Sword. These 4 7th-level star souls were specially chosen by Nye Tian as a combination star soul and could be activated at the same time. He estimated that by activating all 4 star souls at the same time, he would be able to fight against a peak 9th-level Heaven Realm martial artist. Nye Tian had already discovered that the star souls seemed to have some sort of effect on the Star Soul tablet, and under the effect of the star souls, the divine imprints on the Star Soul tablet were showing signs of awakening. Divine imprints, this was a type of power that was comparable to sword imprint. Until now, Nye Tian still did not know what kind of power it was. But his sea of consciousness had inadvertently fused with the divine imprints on the 3-legged mysterious cauldron, causing his divine sense to become even stronger. Divine imprints. Sword imprints. At this time, Nye Tian suddenly thought of something, and his brows furrowed as he could not help but exclaim, "Could there be a relationship between the two?" At this time, the Sword Elder and Corpse Demon Lord were working together to refine the soul slaves, and wanted to use the power of the sword patterns to completely erase the remaining soul power in Niechio's body. As long as they were done, Nye Tian would be able to completely control Niechio. Nye Tian didn't disturb the Sword Elder. He thought for a moment and circulated the power of the divine imprint through his meridians. At the same time, the power of the sword imprint slowly surged. Boom! The moment the power of the divine patterns and the power of the sword patterns collided, an enormous force was generated. In the blink of an eye, Nye Tian felt all the meridians in his body tremble inexplicably, and the aura of his origin power became inexplicably stronger. Nye Tian's eyes narrowed and a look of great surprise appeared on his face. The fusion of the divine imprint and the sword imprint actually produced a strange energy that directly increased his strength. Try again. Nye Tian suppressed the astonishment in his heart and circulated the power of the divine vestige sword mark once more. The essence energy in his body actually became stronger once more. Too bizarre! Nye Tian's face was full of disbelief, his expression becoming incomparably shocked. If he kept on fusing the divine rune and the sword imprint, wouldn't his strength be able to soar continuously? Thinking up to here, Nye Tian became even more excited and started to fuse the divine rune and the sword imprint non-stop, letting the 2 types of energy clash in his body, and his essence energy started to skyrocket non-stop. Holy sh*t. 6th level heaven being strength. After a moment, Nye Tian's entire body was drenched in sweat, but he was extremely excited and could not resist cursing. In just a few hours, his strength actually forcefully increased by a level. Nye Tian was shocked until he stared dumbfoundedly, his expression somewhat dazed. This sort of situation was too bizarre and too terrifying. If it continued at this speed, in a few days, he would be able to reach the peak Heavenly Emperor realm. Stinking brat, don't use the power of the sword mark anymore. Just as Nye Tian was extremely excited, Sword Elder's voice sounded out very angrily. Nye Tian was slightly stunned, only then did he remember that Sword Elder still wanted to use the power of the sword mark to erase Niechio's soul force. Sword Elder, just what kind of power is the sword mark and the divine rune? Why would it directly increase my strength after fusing them together? Since Sword Elder appeared, Nye Tian voiced out the doubts in his heart. Sword Elder was rather impatient, but he still said, "Sword mark and divine rune are the same kind of power, but they are of different attributes. This is a kind of power that surpasses heaven and earth spiritual energy. Deity realm martial artists call it the bright spirit power." Bright spirit power. Nye Tian had a face of astonishment. There was indeed a higher level of power in this world. Bright spirit power exists between heaven and earth. It has no beginning and no end, neither born nor extinguished. It is considered to be a type of source power. Sword Elder continued to speak with a hint of solemnity in his expression. The power of the divine rune and the power of the sword mark are of different attributes. But I am very curious, how are you able to fuse the two powers together? Nie Tian was stunned. He did not know what bright spirit power was, and even more did not know how the power of the divine rune and the sword mark could be fused. But Nie Tian guessed in his heart that it should be related to the power of the stars in his body. The power of the stars, from the moment it was awakened, it had always been subtly changing his body. At the same time, Nie Tian also noticed a detail. Sword Elder said that bright spirit power was a type of source power, but he faintly felt that this statement might be wrong. Because the raw star stone had once said that the power of the stars was the source of power. Let's not talk so much with you. You should quickly raise your strength to the heavenly emperor realm. At that time, this sovereign will give you a big gift. Sword Elder saw that Nie Tian was in a daze, so he laughed and once again returned to the hellfire furnace. A big gift. Nie Tian was stunned, and his heart was filled with great anticipation. A big gift from Sword Elder, it must be no small matter. Then I must raise my strength to the heavenly emperor realm as soon as possible. Nie Tian's mouth curved up and he smiled. But he did not dare to use the power of the sword mark again, and he had already discovered that the power of the sword mark in his body had weakened a lot. He guessed that the bright spirit power should be a very thin power, and the sword mark must absorb the bright spirit power in order to transform into the power of the sword mark. This was just like the Yuan Qi in a martial artist's body. It must be absorbed by the Yuan meridian in order to be transformed into different types of Yuan Qi. The amount of bright spirit power that the sword mark could absorb was limited, and he had almost used it all up, which was why Sword Elder was so anxious. It seems that relying on the power of the sword mark to increase my strength is not very realistic. Nie Tian was speechless, and he smiled. But after all, he had another way to cultivate, and it was not bad. The next morning, Nie Tian walked out of his room, and his body was emitting a sharp light. He was in high spirits, and he was showing off his abilities. Just as he walked out of his room, he suddenly felt a cold aura, and he furrowed his brows. Then, the corners of his mouth curled up and he shouted coldly, "Come out!" Bang! As he shouted angrily, invisible sound waves turned into air waves, bombarding the void, and a muffled sound was heard. Good technique, you can actually detect my existence. Then, a figure appeared in the void, and the face was very familiar. It was the assassin of the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss, Yu Jingji. Chapter 955. Nie Tian stared at Yu Jingji. A cold light flashed in his eyes. He thrust his sword forward, but this time, it was in a different direction. The sharp sword essence whizzed out. The sword essence rolled in the void, and the sword radiance filled the space within thousands of meters. The momentum of heaven and earth changed. At this moment, in the empty space, a surprised voice rang out. After that, a boundless palm force descended, landing with a loud bang. Boom! With an explosion, the two powerful forces collided. The surrounding houses shook violently and turned into ruins. The next moment, a figure in a black robe appeared. He was tall but extremely skinny. From afar, he looked like a skeleton. Nie Tian, long time no see. The figure stood in midair. Although he had deliberately restrained his aura, he still gave off a powerful pressure. His expression was calm as usual, and he didn't show too much surprise, but his heart was like a stormy sea. Nie Tian could sense Yu Jingji's presence. This was not a big deal. As long as one's spiritual energy was strong enough, one could do it. However, his figure was hidden in the void, perfectly fusing with the space. There was almost no fluctuation of origin energy. Yet, Nie Tian could still sense his presence. This was very strange. You are the dragon head of the abyss of demons? Nie Tian looked at the skinny elder and asked in a deep voice. The elder in front of him looked extremely skinny. He was like a candle in the wind. However, his aura was very powerful. His strength was even more domineering. He had actually reached the 8th level of the celestial realm. There was a strong fluctuation of dragon chi in the elder's body. He must be from the abyss of demons. Nie Tian guessed that even if he was not the dragon head of the abyss of demons, he was definitely an important figure in the abyss of demons. I am not the dragon head. I am the high priest of Dragon Abyss, In Zishu said in a deep voice. His voice was deep and suffocating. High priest of Dragon Abyss. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. Then, he calmed down and smiled faintly. It seems that you have received Li Tianhao's message. Since this person knew his name, they clearly knew what had happened in the forbidden land of wind and cloud. Nie Tian was a little puzzled. The people of the 10,000 demon dragon abyss were not interested in the cliff dragon coffins. Instead, they kept chasing after him. Was he more important than those dragon coffins? In Zishu nodded his head as a strange smile appeared on his face. Since you already know, then hand over the dragon ring. His tone was calm but domineering, as if he was directly ordering Nie Tian. If you want the dragon ring, come and get it yourself. Nie Tianling replied indifferently. His eyes were filled with suppressed anger. In Zishu's attitude was too arrogant. Did he think that a mere high priest could scare Nie Tian? What a joke! Humph! In Zishu laughed, and his expression suddenly became cold. He said coldly, Nie Tian, don't refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. If you obediently hand over the dragon ring, I can let you join the myriad demons' dragon abyss. I can even let you become a priest of the dragon abyss. If you don't hand it over, not only will you die, but everyone around you will also die. The killing intent in In Zishu's eyes could no longer be concealed as he uttered the word die. The sharp killing intent was like an invisible net that enveloped Nie Tian. Nie Tian. At this moment, Mo Rushi and the others appeared. Feeling the bone-chilling coldness, they couldn't help but scream. Don't come over. Nie Tian immediately waved his hand and said to Han Tian, protect the others. Nie Tian was confident that he could deal with In Zishu, but he needed time. If Yu Jingji attacked the others at this time, it would be bad. Yes, Han Tian replied. He stared coldly at Yu Jingji. Last time, Yu Jingji had injured him. This time, it wouldn't be so easy. In that case, you must go against the 10,000 demon dragon abyss. In Zishu coldly smiled. Before his ice-cold voice faded, he had already made his move. His palm swatted out, and a tremendous amount of dragon chi roared out, condensing into a giant dragon claw in the air that swiped at Nie Tian. Nie Tian reacted extremely quickly. He moved and avoided the dragon claw head-on. With a loud bang, 100-meter-long dragon claw pit appeared on the ground behind him. You want to be arrogant in front of me with such strength? Nie Tianling smiled coldly. His whole body also released a powerful dragon aura. At the same time, the power of thunder surged out. The surrounding space immediately surged with a terrifying thunder-fighting intent. In Zishu's eyes slightly darkened. He originally thought that he could capture Nie Tian with one move if he personally attacked. But now, it seemed that Nie Tian's strength was far beyond his expectations. Nie Tian, you are too arrogant. In Zishu's eyes became even colder. His whole body was filled with killing intent. A dragon shadow burst out of his body, and a powerful aura immediately froze the surrounding space. The people of the 10,000 demon dragon abyss are really strong. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed, and he became much more cautious. From his aura, it could be seen that In Zishu was stronger than Yu Rushuang. Go to hell! In Zishu let out a fierce roar, and the dragon-shaped shadow that enveloped his body suddenly went berserk. Like a real divine dragon, it rolled out, stirred up the dark clouds in the sky, and directly swooped down towards Nietian. "Watch out!" Seeing this, everyone's eyes narrowed, and they couldn't help but cry out. "Come on!" Nietian was not afraid. Instead, he became excited. The power of thunder in his body revolved crazily, and the purple-gold lightning gathered to form a thunder dragon, wrapping around his body. The next moment, Nietian's body shot up into the sky. Roar! The thunder dragon roared angrily, and a mighty dragon aura surged out. Rumble! Rumble! The void continued to explode, and the surging dragon aura wreaked havoc in the space. Both Nietian and Inzishu had dragon rings, so the dragon aura released from their bodies was real. Mo Rushi and the others looked at the void, where the two dragon shadows were fighting, colliding, attacking, and resisting each other. The entire sky was filled with a violent aura, and terrifying power surged in the air. This was the purest confrontation of power, a battle of dragon aura. Rumble! At this moment, the two dragons collided fiercely with each other. The two silhouettes retreated and stabilized themselves in the air. Nietian was covered in blood, but the determination in his eyes didn't change, and the battle intent in his body became even wilder. On the other side, Inzishu was also covered in blood, and he looked even more miserable than Nietian. He hadn't expected the dragon aura in Nietian's body to be so strong, and it had far exceeded his expectations. "Yu Jingji, what are you waiting for? Do it!" Suddenly, Inzishu looked at Yu Jingji and roared. Yu Jingji's eyes turned cold, and he immediately locked on to Mo Rushi and the others. He could already see that Mo Rushi and Nietian's relationship was not ordinary. As long as he captured her, he was not afraid that Nietian wouldn't give in. "Your opponent is me." Just before Yu Jingji moved, a huge figure appeared and stopped him. It was his old rival, Han Tian. "Brat, it's you again." Yu Jingji smiled cold, and his eyes became sinister. Chapter 956. When Nietian saw that Yu Jingji was about to make a move but was stopped by Han Tian, he felt slightly relieved. However, he had to get rid of Inzishu as soon as possible. Yu Jingji was a martial artist who had fused with a sage's bone. Han Tian was no match for him. "Nietian, where did you get your dragon ring?" Inzishu looked at Nietian cold and suddenly asked. Nietian was stunned for a moment, but he immediately realized that his opponent was trying to buy time. Inzishu was waiting for Yu Jingji to capture Mo Rushi and the others. As long as they had hostages, no matter how powerful Nietian was, it would be useless. "You don't deserve to know." However, Nietian would not give him such a chance. With a roar, his figure moved, and the thunder dragon under his feet rolled out. The power of thunder gathered in the void and formed several giant lightning bolts that were thousands of meters long. They intersected and formed a giant lightning net that pounced towards Inzishu. What a powerful force! Inzishu could feel the powerful thunder fighting will, and his eyes narrowed. He then punched out and a strange force was released. A mass of black light condensed into a black fist in the air. Boom! The fist shook the sky. Suddenly, a vast aura bloomed in the void, and a terrifying aura of death descended. Sage's bone. When Nietian saw the black fist, his eyes trembled violently. The proud sword wings appeared on his back. With a flap of the wings, he quickly retreated thousands of meters away. Boom! With a loud noise, the black fist broke through the lightning net and drew a terrifying trajectory in the air. The space let out a mournful wail. Nietian's eyes suddenly narrowed. Could it be that the black fist flew past his body? Half of his arm was invaded by a black aura, and he instantly lost consciousness. Bang! He focused slightly and operated the Yuan meridians in his body, directly forcing the black aura out of his body. He then spat out a mouthful of dirty blood. Fortunately, he dodged in time. If he was hit by the Black Fist, even if he did not die, he would have lost a layer of skin. He did not expect that Zishu also had a sage's bone, and it was even more terrifying than the sage's bone in Yu Jingji's body. Another sage's bone. Could there be a sage's grave in the 10,000 demon dragon abyss? Nie Tian's eyes flickered as he made a terrifying guess. Yu Jingji had a sage's bone, and now Zishu had another sage's bone. Nie Tian couldn't help but suspect that the 10,000 demons dragon abyss might contain the legendary sage's lost tomb. The saint's tomb was a better place than any other ancient ruins. After the fall of a sage, his remains were indestructible and became the bones of a sage. The place where the sages had fallen was the sage's tomb. Imagine the countless bones of saints buried in one place. It would drive anyone crazy. However, Zishu's fusion with the saint's bone was still not thorough enough. It was only slightly better than Yu Jingji's, but it was still far from being able to unleash the true power of the saint's bone. Nie Tian, you didn't expect me to have a saint's bone, did you? Ha! Zishu laughed wildly and said in a cold voice, "Obediently accept your death." From his point of view, since he had used the saint's bone, Nie Tian would no longer be able to fight back. It's just a piece of broken bone. Do you really think you're invincible? Nie Tianling smiled coldly. His eyes were unusually firm, without the slightest fluctuation. Although the saint's bone was strong, Zishu was far from being able to unleash its true power. Therefore, Nie Tian wasn't afraid. You're courting death. Zishu was completely enraged. He roared and punched again. A terrifying dark energy surged out, and the surroundings suddenly fell into darkness. The atmosphere became extremely evil. Nie Tian. Mo Rushi saw the sky suddenly darkening and Nie Tian's figure submerged in the darkness. Her heart tightened, and her delicate face was filled with worry. She hated herself for being too weak and unable to help Nie Tian at the critical moment. Above the void, Nie Tian's figure stood still. Although the surroundings had become pitch black, his vision was not obstructed. The eye of the starry sky was very powerful. Even in the shroud of dark energy, it was still unaffected. Nie Tian, prepare to die. Zishu's roar sounded in the darkness. The terrifying dark energy suddenly became violent and gathered in the void, becoming more and more intense. Nie Tian's muscles tensed up. The dark power made him feel slightly suffocated, making it hard for him to breathe. At the critical moment, his eyes suddenly focused, and his hand formed the God of War seal. The space shrouded by the dark energy suddenly shook, and the power of heaven and earth changed. Zishu felt the power of heaven and earth change. His eyes narrowed, and then he sneered and said arrogantly, Nie Tian, the power of the saint's bone is not something you can imagine. No matter what you do, you can't escape death. Is that so? The corner of Nie Tian's mouth curled up, and he murmured as if he was talking to himself. The next moment, a golden light seal appeared in his palm, burning with a dazzling white flame. The power of the soul-severing seal and the starry sky's sacred flame is enough to defeat you. Nie Tian smiled slightly, and with a flip of his palm, the soul-severing seal shot out violently, and the surrounding space suddenly tightened. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. At the moment when Nie Tian made his move, countless golden lights appeared, directly cutting the dark space. Die. Almost at the same time, Zishu also made his move. The aura of the dark energy skyrocketed, and a black claw appeared, like a fierce tiger, fiercely pouncing. The powerful power raged, and in the space, darkness and light alternated, fighting against each other. Boom, boom, boom. At a certain moment, the black claw finally collided with the soul-severing seal. A destructive aura surged, and a large area of black light was torn apart by the golden light, collapsing into pieces. The dark energy released by the saint's bone was instantly defeated under the destructive power of the soul-severing seal. How is this possible? Zishu's figure shuddered violently, unable to believe the scene before him. The power of the saint's bone was so strong that he was confident that he could fight against a ninth-layer heaven-human realm expert, yet it couldn't resist Nye Tian's strange seal? Nye Tian had used the strongest seal among the 3 seals of the divine god of battle, the soul-severing seal. Furthermore, he had merged the power of the starry sacred flame, which increased the power of the soul-severing seal by a few times. The saint's bone was indeed powerful, but Yin Zishu had not truly merged with it. It was highly possible that he had used some kind of evil art to merge his body with the saint's bone. This method was unable to unleash the true power of the saint's bone, thus it was unable to resist Nye Tian's soul-severing seal. Dragon Abyss High Priest, you're the one who's going to die this time. As Yin Zishu was in a state of shock, Nye Tian's icy voice could be heard, followed by a murderous sword glow. Yin Zishu could feel the aura of death approaching him, but it was too late for him to defend himself. His eyes were filled with great fear, as a sword glow flickered in front of him. His body shuddered, and his life force was instantly extinguished. The high priest of the 10,000 demons Dragon Abyss was dead. Chapter 957. Up in the sky, just as Yin Zishu's life was cut off, the darkness in the space suddenly disappeared, and the world returned to its original brightness. Nye Tian's figure moved, and he came to Yin Zishu's side. A flame gushed out of his hand, and directly burned Yin Zishu's body. A dark golden palm bone appeared in front of him, and on one of the fingers of the palm bone there was a dragon ring. The hand of a saint! Nye Tian completely ignored the dragon ring, and his eyes shone as he looked at the dark golden palm bone in front of him. He felt a vast and mysterious aura, and his whole person was stunned. The bone of a saint, this was the real hand of a saint. The bone of a saint! At this time, a sharp scream rang out. It was the voice of the Sword Elder. Nye Tian was awakened by this scream, and he immediately calmed down and put away the palm bone of a saint. Now was not the time to be surprised, there was still an unfinished enemy on the other side. On the other side of the sky, Han Tian and Yu Jingji's battle continued. Han Tian had the heavenly stone body, and his strength was very strong, but he was still no match for Yu Jingji. After a long battle, his body was already seriously injured, and his pale face was covered with dirt, which was obviously caused by the dark energy in his body. Oh no! Yu Jingji saw that Yin Zishu had been killed by Nye Tian, and he screamed. His figure moved, and he wanted to escape. Even Yin Zishu was no match for Nye Tian, so how could he fight the latter? Want to escape? Too late. Nye Tian's speed was extremely fast, and his whole body was surging with the power of thunder. He was like a ferocious beast, and he madly pounced towards Yu Jingji. A black vortex appeared on half of Yu Jingji's face, and a powerful dark energy surged out, rushing towards Nye Tian. You want to take the opportunity to escape again? Nye Tianling smiled coldly. Last time, Yu Jingji had used this method to escape, and this time, he wanted to use the same trick again. How could it be so easy? Die! Nye Tian did not care at all, and with a loud bang, he slammed his palm down, and the violent power of thunder came crashing down, directly engulfing the dark energy. Ah! A shrill scream was heard as Yu Jingji's body was wrapped up by the lightning. Suddenly, a terrifying force came from all directions and tore his body apart. After a bloody scene, a dark golden skull appeared, and beside it was a dragon ring. Nye Tian smiled and raised his arm, putting away the saint's facial bone and the dragon ring. In the blink of an eye, he had 2 saint bones and 2 dragon rings. Yin Zishu and Yu Jingji's dragon rings were both 4-star dragon rings, but just like Li Tianhao's dragon ring, Nye Tian's spiritual consciousness still could not detect the information inside the dragon rings. Nye Tian descended from the sky and came to Han Tian's side, helping him force out the dark evil energy from his body. Nye Tian, are you alright? At this time, Mo Rushi walked over with a nervous look on her face. Nye Tian smiled faintly, indicating that he was fine. After dealing with the assassins of the 10,000 demons Dragon Abyss, Nye Tian asked the others to leave. Then, he returned to his room with Emorushi. Nye Tian, I'm sorry. Emorushi looked at Nye Tian, and the corner of her eyes suddenly became wet. Her voice was slightly hoarse, as if she was about to cry. Rushi, you. Nye Tian hugged the girl in his arms tightly, not knowing what to do. Emorushi's body trembled and she said, "It's all my fault. Every time you were in danger, I could only watch from the side." Nye Tian's heart trembled, and a warm feeling welled up in his heart. So, Emorushi was sad because of this. "Silly girl, you're helping me by watching from the side." Nye Tian held the beautiful face in front of him with both hands and joked, making Emorushi laugh through her tears. "Why?" Emorushi's tears turned into laughter as she raised her head and asked with a serious expression, "Why?" Nye Tian nodded and said very seriously, "Because a man can't lose a battle in front of his woman." Emorushi felt the determination in Nye Tian's eyes, and her heart inexplicably warmed. Then, she thought of the meaning in Nye Tian's words, and her little face blushed all the way to her ears. After a while, Emorushi wiped the tears from the corner of her eyes, and suddenly thought of something and asked, "Oh, by the way, what kind of power did that person use just now? It's so strange." "It's the sage's bone." Nye Tian nodded slightly, and then the sage's palm bone appeared in his hand. Suddenly, a mysterious aura circulated in the space, and it was as if everything in the surroundings had stopped. What a strange power! Emorushi was shocked, and her beautiful eyes couldn't help but flicker when she felt the mysterious aura released by the sage's bone. However, when Nye Tian looked at the sage's palm bone in his hand, he frowned slightly and murmured, "According to the legend, the bones and blood of the sage are all golden. Why is this sage's bone dark gold? It's caused by sorcery." As soon as his voice fell, the Sword Elder's voice sounded and said, "The person who fused with the sage's bone used some kind of sorcery, causing the sage's bone to be covered in dust, causing the skeleton to turn dark gold." As expected, Nye Tian's heart trembled. He had previously guessed that Yin Zishu and Yu Jingji must have used some kind of sorcery, which was why they could fuse with the sage's bone. However, their fusion was not a true fusion, and they couldn't even exert 1% of the sage's bone's power. In his previous life, Nye Tian had seen the Snow Emperor's sage's arm bone, and with a casual move, it could destroy heaven and earth. The Snow Emperor had the Snow Cloud sacred body, which was why he could fuse with the sage's bone. It was precisely because of the sage's bone that the Snow Emperor could become the supreme of the 9 emperors. It was really hard to imagine how terrifying a real sage would be if a mere piece of bone could have such a powerful power. "Nye Tian, who is this lady to you?" Suddenly, the Sword Elder asked. "My fiancée." Nye Tian was stunned for a moment and then said, "I want to test her martial body." A sharp light flashed in the Sword Elder's eyes, and he directly came out of Nye Tian's sea of consciousness and appeared in front of Emorushi. Nye Tian was suddenly stunned. He didn't know that the Sword Elder could leave his sea of consciousness. However, as soon as the Sword Elder left the sea of consciousness, his originally illusory body became even dimmer. Obviously, the Sword Elder only temporarily left Nye Tian's sea of consciousness, and he couldn't stay for a long time. "Nye Tian, what is this thing?" Emorushi was shocked by the Sword Elder's sudden appearance, and she exclaimed, "Little girl, don't be nervous, I am Nye Tian's friend." The Sword Elder explained, and at the same time, a light gushed out of his palm, like a flame, swaying and floating. "Rushi, the Sword Elder is my friend. He has something to do." Nye Tian was slightly nervous, and he firmly held Emorushi's small hand and said. He noticed a strange look in the Sword Elder's eyes, and it seemed that the latter had discovered something on Emorushi's body. The Sword Elder took a deep breath, and the light on his palm flowed into Emorushi's body, and after a moment, the light returned to his palm and disappeared. At this moment, the Sword Elder's whole body directly stiffened, and he stared at Emo Rushi with a stunned face. His mouth kept trembling, but he couldn't make a single sound. Nya Tian, what happened to this old gentleman? Emo Rushi's scalp tingled under the Sword Elder's stare, and she cautiously asked. Sword Elder, what did you discover? Nya Tian was also extremely nervous, and his heart was in his throat.